means to be Iranian, what it means to be excited about cheering on the Iranian national team. Even things as simple as a flag. Of course, the Islamic Republic has a flag. It's the official flag of Iran, but I mean, you have people who want to wave the pre-revolutionary flag, the flag of the old Iranian monarchy. At a time like this when emotions are running very, very high, what does it actually mean to be Iranian and to come out and cheer on a national football team?
And on Friday, tensions between pro-government and anti-government fans boiled over during Iran's match against Wales, with female anti-government fans claiming harassment by pro-regime supporters. Notably on Friday, the Iranian team sang the country's national anthem, in contrast to their silence during their first World Cup fixture against England. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
To recap our top stories, large-scale protests across China against the government's strict COVID-19 restrictions have continued for a fourth day. The UK's armed forces could be brought in to help the country's health service during large upcoming nurse strikes. Britain's electricity operator has stopped short of triggering its emergency winter scheme, which would have required households and businesses to cut their energy use. And the White House has quietly approved plans to build the largest oil export terminal in the United States. That's the latest feature story news. Chris Jones reporting.
Caitlin Taggart was a beautiful, lively girl who loved laughing and playing outside, but all that changed at the age of 12. Caitlin slipped into a persistent vegetative state, confining her almost entirely to her bed and Facebook.
She doesn't even have basic motor functions anymore. We literally have to drag her to the car to drive her to school in the morning.
She's totally unresponsive when we talk to her. Her eyes just roll back in her head.
Caitlin, honey, it's your dad.
With no hope that their daughter would ever recover, the Taggarts decided to seek legal permission to end Caitlin's life.
It is the most difficult decision we've ever had to make, but we just keep reminding ourselves that the real Caitlin is already gone. That's just her body texting.
We give her one painless injection, and that's it. Her eyes may flutter a bit, or she may murmur, "Are you for real killing me right now?"
This is the Onion News Network. Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live. Welcome to the program. The phones are open here as always. You can bring up anything you want to talk about on the radio. With you in the studio tonight, it's Ian.
It's Bonnie.
And Aria.
Lots of apparently news coming out of China, and I've been busy with other things today, so I haven't been following the Chinese situation closely, but we did discuss it last week, and it was a few weeks ago, several weeks ago, where the Foxconn manufacturing facility, which has like 200,000 people apparently that work for this place. It's like
that's
massive.
An enormous facility.
I can't even imagine that.
I mean, that's bigger than the population of like Keene and most towns
bigger than
in
most
America.
Yeah, most small
Manchester
cities.
too, right?
Bigger than Manchester, New Hampshire by probably like 75,000 people. Yeah.
Yep.
And that's just this one factory. That's one
where they make
facility.
the Apple iPhones.
This is in Shanghai, correct?
I'm not sure. Maybe they have more than one location. I don't know. It might be Beijing. I'm not sure exactly where it is.
Well, China has a lot of really large cities, just like the U.S. does, to be fair, but Shanghai dwarfs New York City, as does the largest city in the world. I don't remember which it was, but it wasn't Shanghai. Shanghai's the second, if I remember correctly. However, these cities exist in a scale that 200,000 people working in a single factory is beyond my understanding.
Yeah, and they even have dormitories that are there. And of course, now because of COVID lockdowns, they're forced to live there 24/7. That's why they've been trying to get out. What was that?
I had never heard of Wuhan before COVID, and it has, I can't even remember how many people.
Millions, probably.
Like millions and millions.
Yeah.
Well, China itself has more than 1 billion people.
Correct.
Yeah.
So.
Correct. And now, as of last week, we were talking about how there's now over 400 million people on lockdown in China. Well, apparently some people have had enough, and now there are
Sadly,
protests.
I don't think that's going to be what we're finding the case is, though. I don't think it's that they've had enough of the oppression or the lockdown or anything like that.
Really?
Based on what I saw recently and some of the complaints we were hearing from these factory workers who we talked about last week at the Foxconn factory, their biggest criticism of how all of this is being handled is that the Chinese government isn't doing enough to keep them safe.
You should have seen that coming, Ian. Like, that's how they were acting at the beginning when we first heard about these things. And then they were protesting with masks on.
They learned their fear from the Chinese government. It's the one that told them this thing is deadly. It's not a joke. We have to do all of this in order to keep you from dying, and people are still dying and getting sick. And they're like,
that's true.
You, Chinese government, you're not doing enough.
That is what they were saying about the Foxconn escape attempts. But in this story here about the protests going on in China right now that apparently the police are cracking down hard against, it does have to do with the restrictions. So we'll get into that.
I hope so.
Yeah, I want to get into that because it sounds like it's huge news. Plus, Bitcoin mining ban in the United States. You can guess which state did it first.
How could this even be enforced? That can't be constitutional, first of all.
They can do it until it's overturned in the courts, right? So
How can you tell someone that they can't use their graphics card or their computer in a certain way that isn't doing anything illegal?
We'll get into the details. But Sam is on the line calling us from Ohio. He's a podcast listener, which you can subscribe to, by the way, over at our website. It's feeds.freetalklive.com. They'll take you right to our podcast links. But Sam, what's on your mind tonight?
Just curious if you have any updates about your Crypto 6. Now I take it you and only Aria case?
No, it sounds like you've been disconnected for a little bit. Aria, unfortunately, did take a plea deal. I mean, I don't blame anybody for doing it. It's an intimidating situation.
I don't know that I would necessarily say all, but so backing up, it seems like the last time you heard when it was just
everybody wants to see a good fight, right? Aria. I mean, that's why they're disappointed, right?
Yeah, but we filed a motion to have the charge dismissed for operating an unlicensed money transmitting business because the whole crux of my defense was that the FinCEN or the Treasury, they weren't authorized by Congress to do what they were doing. So, and that's why I wasn't breaking the law. That was the crux of my defense, essentially. And then the judge said, no, my decision is that all of this is right and it's going to go forward. At which point I was faced with being, according to, I had good reasons to believe that I was being faced with being found guilty and getting sentenced to prison for 3 to 5 years, or pleading guilty to that charge and getting probation for 3 to 5 years.
Still
Yeah. Well, probably. We don't know. There's no guarantees in any of this, right? However, that was essentially the path before me. There's still, I mean, obviously there could still have been some possibility of being found not guilty by a jury. But everything I heard and researched in my case, at least, suggested to me that was like betting on winning the lottery, I suppose, from my point of view.
Maybe so.
And it was like, I don't have to win the lottery. I just have to not lose the war.
Yeah. I mean, you're going to be a felon for the rest of your life as a result of that.
I am, but that seemed to be like it was going to be the likeliest result for me in any event.
I would say differently that was not the only crux of the argument for that particular charge, and I have a few other cruxes in mind, and we're going to go to trial and see what the jury thinks about those things. So, Sam, that's kind of an update for you. There was another update that was pretty big news that just broke this afternoon, and I think I'm free to talk about it since my attorney...
It's public record, man.
Yeah, my attorney made a filing about it. They're dropping a bunch of charges. Like,
good.
All the so-called fraud-related charges have been publicly revealed this afternoon as being dropped from the case, and that's
they are being dropped. They have not been dropped yet. The prosecutors have not said yes, we're dropping these, or at least not in any paper form.
Yeah, basically, this was one of those things where the attorneys talk behind the scenes with the judge, and so
you can't go to these things. No. That's how corrupt the institution really is. That the prosecutors and Ian's attorney and the judges, they can all sit together and have these backroom deals, and Ian is literally prohibited from being there as they discuss what they're going to do with him.
Yeah, I remember there was somebody, and I don't remember who it was, that told me a long time ago, they were like, these things are really corrupt because they have what they do in public, but then the prosecution and the defense's lawyers and the judge all go into a room behind the...
Judge's chambers.
It's called the chambers, and discuss things together. And I was like, what? How could that happen? And he was like, they're all friends. They're all coworkers. And I was just like, how could that happen? I remember that so well. I'm always thinking, yep, that's exactly how it happens.
And one of the funny things about this change with these charges being dropped, because it's like there were I don't know, a dozen wire fraud charges or something like that, so-called wire fraud, which is what they were charging me with. And you were facing some of it when you were facing the charges,
I have
Aria.
4 wire... Well, at the moment, which will be funny if they drop your charges here in the next few weeks, I will be the last one with wire fraud charges on me because mine haven't been formally dropped yet.
They always drop them at the actual sentencing
Now, mine
hearing.
will be dropped, but the wire fraud and the money laundering charges were never of much consequence to me in the first place because I knew that was just them trying to throw darts at the board to see what would stick, and it was painfully transparent. That's what they were trying to do, and none of them were going to stick.
Well, the saddest part about it is 3 people who did take plea deals in this case pled to a wire fraud charge. And so they obviously, they were scared, right? Like people,
everyone has their reasons.
Right, everybody takes pleas for a different reason, and like I said, I don't blame anyone for doing it. But they took it, and so now they've been convicted of something that likely would have been dropped if they had simply held on, until this point.
It's not certain, and maybe the presence of more people in this trial would have caused it all to play out differently. But it's not unreasonable to assume that if they hadn't taken plea deals, all of the charges against them would have been dismissed and would have just been left with you and me anyway.
Could very well have been that way. But now, unfortunately, those 3 folks who I love very much are going to be federal felons for the rest of their lives because of this.
Fraud convictions.
With fraud convictions, which sounds really bad.
It sounds horrible to prospective employers, and I wouldn't like it.
Even though they didn't defraud anyone. There was never, in their cases and in our cases, and any of these charges they were alleging was never alleged that anyone lost anything.
No, the prosecutor said in open court at my latest hearing that no one lost anything.
Yeah,
There's no restitution.
And that there was no victims except banks.
Right, but the banks never lost anything.
I was about to say that you had said before, the banks were the only victims that they could even come up with.
But and that's only what they said, right? Like they only said the banks are the victims. The banks have not lost anything.
They admitted the banks, had no loss.
If anything, the banks gained throughout all of this because they charged fees for their services, right? Sam, if you wanted to stay, you can. I don't know if you got to ask all your questions. There's more coming up here in moments. This is Free Talk Live. Gold and silver. You can own the most stable assets in recorded history with BullionMax.com. Buy direct from BullionMax.com without talking to a salesperson, and your precious metals shipped fully insured directly to your home. Free Talk Live can get you their silver starter kit at employee pricing. Just go to BullionMax.com/FTL. It includes 5 ounces of the most desirable silver products plus a free gold back. This offer is limited to 1 per household, so get yours now. Go to BullionMax.com/FTL.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
So we're trying to move. Welcome back to Keene, New Hampshire, Free Talk Live, the home of Free Talk Live, where we're trying to move 20,000-ish libertarians to the state of New Hampshire so that we can have a stronger impact in local and state politics. Because as you've noticed, libertarians have been running for things throughout the world for the last several decades.
Join liberty-minded voluntarists, anarchists, and libertarians from June 15th through the 18th for the 7th annual Fork Fest at Rogers Campground in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire. Fork Fest is a fork of the Porcupine Freedom Festival, which sold out in 2022. For 2023, we're going back to where it all started, the weekend before PorcFest. ForkFest is decentralized, which means that there's no ticket cost and no one is in charge. All you have to do to join the fun is reserve your camping site, RV site, or motel room with Rogers Campground for June 15th through the 18th. You can find out more at the unofficial website forkfest.party. You can also connect with other attendees on the Forkfest Telegram and Matrix chat rooms, as well as the Forkfest forum. You can find links to those at forkfest.party. We hope to see you there June 15th through the 18th. Forkfest.party. Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
Have you had enough of the big-name web hosting services that are long on promises but short on bleeding-edge features, uptime, and customer service? Try Agorist Hosting, the agile web host that offers full concierge service from website redesign, full e-commerce solutions, custom apps for your Shopify store, IPFS integration, and more. Agorist Hosting is ready to take your web presence into the future. To get started, head over to agoristhosting.com.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live from Tuesday. Welcome to this Monday night edition with Aria, Bonnie, and Ian. We're talking here about developments in the cryptocurrency space and just in the world space in general. Like China, for instance. I have an interesting story about it. I am surprised to see that the Chinese government is even allowing protests to happen, because I've seen the level of control that the Chinese government has over the people in China, right?
But there's just so many. How could you?
But this was part of the whole social credit system and the use of WeChat, as someone was mentioning to us here a week ago. The popularity of WeChat is almost ubiquitous in China. Everyone has it. It's always on their. If you have a phone in China, it also has WeChat installed onto it, and that's sort of how they monitor people. It's got the COVID-19 thing built into it, where they can see who is and isn't transmitting COVID-19 to other people. But obviously, China has been dealing with the COVID-19 vaccine for 3 months longer than the rest of the world has, because it originated there in Wuhan. And
so they got the vaccine even before the rest of the world? Oh, you mean the virus?
I meant the virus. I don't know if I said vaccine or not. But it's been a mess there. And I've been watching it interestedly since it all began, because it seemed like it was going to be such a bigger deal than it actually turned out to be. But for those who don't remember, this all originated in China. We started seeing reports of people like just dropping dead in the streets as they were walking, and these teams of people clad in yellow radioactive looking protecting gear going through the streets, spraying what appeared to be sanitizer or some sort of steam all over everything.
By the way, they now have drones that are spraying those from the sky, spraying that whatever that chemical is.
It's crazy.
And we've never learned what that chemical is, but It looked like it was going to be this great big thing that was going to kill all sorts of people, and the Chinese government seemed to be attempting to suppress news of how deadly it really was. And then it got out to the rest of the world, and it turned out to be basically just a cult. But the people in China, they get all of their news from the Chinese government. They have no other source of news. So when their government says, hey, there's this virus, it's super deadly, you have to lock down, you have to hunker down in your home, and everything has to be shut down. That's the only way to deal with it, or everyone is going to die. They take it seriously because that's their only trusted source of information.
They've been trained for generations to be obedient to the state. We can continue on to China, but Sam is still on the line here, I think. Sam, are you with us?
Yeah. How is that considered a right to a fair trial if they're allowed to discuss things about you in a back room?
Well, I mean, anybody that looks closely at the trial process, the so-called justice system in the United States, independently, if you're not collecting a paycheck from the federal or state governments, should probably come to the conclusion that it is in no way, shape, or form fair to the defendants.
You mentioned a really good point. There's a difference between the trial and the trial process. Like the trial is this thing that's going to take place over a 2 to 3 week period here in the next few weeks, right? But the trial process has been going on since just before March the 16th of 2021.
That's right.
And it's got a lot of stuff. There's been all sorts of meetings. Some of these meetings we wouldn't want to go to because it's just the judges and the attorneys arguing over some trivial verb or noun or something that we don't really care about. We don't want to waste our time dealing with. But some of these...
It would be interesting to see it, honestly. Just to see
there were some that my attorney was like, this is what we're arguing about. I was like, yeah, I don't know, thank you.
That's the thing. You don't get to see how they all interact with one another without the cameras. Of course, you can't bring cameras in federal court, but without the potential witnesses or whatever, and like what the atmosphere is like between them. So it's obviously a very different engagement for them.
But just because there's a trial process and then a trial doesn't mean that, and I don't think Aria is saying that it means that they can just trample on your rights before your trial, because you're supposed to have a due process. That's what that word means. I mean, that's what the word deals with, is the trial process. Before you get convicted of anything, you're supposed to be considered innocent. And Ian and Aria have not been considered innocent this whole time. They've been punished for something they haven't been convicted of.
You're absolutely right. And it's very weird how all of the laws and precedents on the book tell them that you have to use the lightest possible restrictions on people that you can in order to ensure your goals. You can't, if you want somebody to appear in court, you can't lock them in their house 23 hours a day, 7 days a week.
But that's what they did to Ian.
I know that's what they did. But they broke their own laws by doing so. That was exactly the point I was getting at, is they're supposed to make the lightest restrictions possible. But in almost all of these people's cases, they went way overboard, and when we challenged it, they always, on every single occasion, had to dial their restrictions back. Sure. At no point was the judge like, you know what, these restrictions do seem reasonable and required. But that has never happened in this case.
That's one of the funny things about this. So, like, the sad part, as I mentioned, is that 3 people took a plea for a charge that probably would have been dropped, since those charges just got dropped against me.
Well, not yet.
Well, they haven't done it officially, but it is essentially a done deal.
Based on the paperwork, Sisti was like, the prosecutors have said they're not pursuing these charges further. And apparently they made that statement to a judge, and they're going to have a hard time if they want to go, oh, no, we're
just kidding.
Yeah. Psych.
So, but the funny part is like how the attitude has changed, because also Sisti, my attorney, Mark Sisti, filed not only a motion, basically the reason why this was revealed was he filed a motion to get the evidence for these so-called fraud charges that have been dropped excluded from the case. Like, you can't, you dropped the charges, you can't present the evidence. So that's what he filed. But then after that, he filed another motion to remove the spyware from my phone and my laptop. And he mentions in this that he's spoken with the prosecution, and they're totally fine with removing that spyware. So the prosecution has gone from Ian Freeman is a sophisticated cyber criminal and he is a danger to the community, we cannot let him out of a cage, to, oh yeah, we don't really want to watch him. I mean, it's taken 18 months. But that's essentially their perspective now.
That's the historical record that was created over the last 18 months. That's how things played out.
Yeah. So that's where we're at now, and we got a week till the trial at this point. Jury selection starts on Tuesday.
Tuesday what?
Tuesday the 6th. That will be jury selection, and presumably if the jury is impaneled within, before lunch or something like that, they're probably going to come back and start the trial immediately
Really?
After that. That's what I've heard.
Wow, I was expecting that they would do jury selection that day, and they was like, okay, come back Monday and we'll start the trial. That's what I was expecting.
No, it's supposed to start immediately.
Yeah, if they don't start it immediately, it's going to go into Christmas.
If it's not immediately, it will be the next day. Right, so it'll be one or the other, probably.
Is this, obviously the trial itself will be public. Is the jury selection public?
Yeah. Okay. Anyone can come watch that. The only thing that hasn't been determined yet, which will need to be determined this week, is whether or not the judge is going to authorize an online feed of the trial, so people can actually, at the very minimum, listen. Like, I'm not really concerned whether there's video or not. I just want something to be able to be monitored by people who can't physically come here. This is a national level trial as far as its significance is concerned. And you shouldn't have to take off 2 weeks from, whatever it is you're doing, travel to New Hampshire, get a hotel for 2 weeks just so you can sit in a damn courtroom all day long.
I mean, we're also making a movie and having that audio and or video,
which you can't record it legally, so you definitely would not want to do that.
Oh.
Yeah, you definitely don't want to do that. But having people being able to watch and or listen to the trial without having to come to New Hampshire would be a really nice thing. So we'll let you know as that develops. Thank you, Sam, for the call tonight. Thanks for asking. There's more coming up here. It is Free Talk Live.
My name is Angel Rach. I'm a mother of 2 teenage children, and I fought all the way to the Supreme Court for the right to use the medicine that saved my life. I've been permanently disabled for 10 years, with an inoperable brain tumor, wasting syndrome, and several other serious conditions. For 4 years, I was in a wheelchair, in so much pain I couldn't even hug my kids. The hardest part was looking in their eyes and seeing how much they were suffering because of my medical condition. The medicine that gave me my life back and gave my kids their mom back was cannabis, also known as medical marijuana. With medical marijuana, I can walk, maintain my weight, and I can be a mom. Without it, my doctors believe that I would die. To learn more about medical marijuana, contact Marijuana Policy Project at 1-877-JOIN-MPP or on the web at mpp.org.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Chris Jones. Large-scale protests across China against the government's strict COVID-19 restrictions continue. Police have arrested several demonstrators in what's seen as unprecedented civil disobedience under the leader of Xi Jinping. Patrick Falk reports from Hong Kong.
These protests are gathering momentum. It is taking place in various cities across the mainland, including Chengdu, Wuhan, on university campuses in Beijing. Many people also defying health officials' advice to stay indoors because of the spread of the virus in Beijing's Chaoyang district. And of course, also in Shanghai, where protests have arguably been more confrontational on Urumqi Road. All this triggered by the apartment fire that took place in Urumqi, the capital of Xinjiang province. But these protests aren't just about COVID curbs and what happened in Urumqi. People are also voicing discontent over censorship, with a lot of people symbolically holding up blank pieces of paper.
The armed forces could be brought in to help the UK's health service during upcoming strikes. Health and defence officials are drawing up contingency plans, which could see personnel filling in for ambulance drivers and frontline hospital roles. Nurses are set to hold strike action over pay before Christmas. Business Secretary Grant Shapps says the military would only be used as a last resort.
The NHS always gets ready for any potential disruption, so it's not unusual to sort of game these things out. There's no plan at the moment to call in the army. What is important, though, is I think ideally to get this situation resolved. Nobody wants to see the NHS disrupted. I suspect least of all the nurses.
Britain's electricity operator has stopped short of triggering its emergency winter scheme, which would have required households and businesses to cut their energy usage. A warning had been issued that such steps could be necessary to avoid blackouts in the country on Tuesday. And the Biden administration has quietly approved plans to build the largest oil export terminal in the United States. Here's FSN's Tony Waterman in Texas.
The Seaport Oil Terminal, known as SPOT, would have the capacity to export 2 million barrels per day, making it the largest in the U.S. It is the first of 4 proposed terminals along Texas's Gulf Coast to be approved. The Maritime Administration says it's important to the national interest, but environmental groups have blasted the decision, pointing to a government-led impact statement released in July, which found the project would emit more than 230 million tons of carbon dioxide each year. This could jeopardize the Biden administration's goals of slashing carbon emissions in half by 2030.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live, and the phones are open should you wish to join the show. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. I want to welcome a brand new advertiser here on Free Talk Live. It is the Socratic Experience. And this one, I think a lot of our listeners out there in the Liberty community that value the idea of getting your kids out of the government schools are going to find this one pretty interesting, because we talk a lot about getting your kids out of government schools.
Well, they can't be trusted.
Of course not. I mean, who knows what they're going to do to your kids in there?
Yeah, I watched
communists.
I watched a video about the Mac Martin case last night.
Mac Martin?
Yeah, it was this public preschool in Los Angeles, or maybe not public, but either way, it was a preschool in Los Angeles that like hundreds of kids started claiming that they were raped by the people.
Oh my God,
jeez.
And all kinds of crazy things. But the people who owned it got found not guilty. It was really sad.
But you said that was a preschool?
Yeah.
Those aren't usually run by the government.
Oh, then it's probably private.
Okay.
Either way.
But still, you probably can't trust them.
Yeah.
You can't trust preschools. It creeped me out.
I mean, a lot of private schools aren't much better than government schools. They still sort of align themselves to the sort of government school system of put a bunch of kids in a classroom, put a teacher in front of them, that kind of thing. So when we talk about getting your kids out of government school, you know, that doesn't necessarily give you an answer as to what your options are. And there are a variety of them. And this one is a new one to me. It's the Socratic Experience. So they point out that, of course, as you know, government school is a failed institution. 1 out of 5 graduates are functionally illiterate. 75% of high school students are unhappy, 63% disengaged, and according to the CDC, 19% are considering suicide. It's time that we stop subjecting our children to this madness, and we can help your kid get the same elite education found at Oxford at an affordable price. It is a highly acclaimed, globally known educator, Michael Strong, who's behind this. It's the online academy known as the Socratic Experience, where students learn through philosophical dialogue and are engaged in a highly social and inspiring learning environment. The Socratic Experience nurtures your child's unique genius, and it is proven. Students get into the most prestigious universities and highly selective companies. You can mention Free Talk Live and get 20% off of your first year's tuition. Just go to SocraticExperience.com/FTL. And you can download the parent guide there at SocraticExperience.com/FTL. And, of course, you get that discount of 20%. You can visit SocraticExperience.com/FTL right now as class space is limited. Sounds like an interesting perspective, an interesting approach. I did watch the introductory video and spotted the lady from My Magic Mud in there. So definitely that gives it some,
good.
That gives it some, positive reviews.
I like that it's from home, so like you're not just sending your kids with some creeps potentially, even if it's like private. You don't know those people like you know your family and yourself.
Yep, you've got a story about education coming up here tonight, Bonnie, if we get the chance.
Yep.
So if you want to join the show, the number is 603-283-6160. Aria, you brought the story of the Chinese protests to the table here tonight. Apparently, people are getting out into the streets, and they are tired of these COVID restrictions. At least that's what the Reuters story here says.
Yeah, I haven't gotten into the reasons why people are actually, protesting, but I always get excited when I see protests in China because if any government should be protested against, the Chinese government, well, they should all be protested against, to be fair. But the Chinese government's one of the worst out there, and one of the most likely to clamp down on people for protesting. So it takes a lot of courage for these people to
there's a good
actually
chance
get out and do it.
You're going to get killed.
Yes.
Or disappeared into some death camp or something.
Whatever happens, because we don't even know what happened during Tiananmen, right? There's just like...
No one knows what happened to Tank Man.
The Chinese government said so.
Right, nothing happened then, right? You can't find it on Google in China, at least.
Yep.
Barely a month ago, Xi Jinping assumed an historic third term as China's leader with hardly a whisper of protest. Well, it helps when you're an unelected dictator, but whatever. A banner draped on a Beijing overpass was the only sign of dissent against his rule, with its owner swiftly tracked down and punished. It doesn't say how he was punished, of course. But I can imagine he was disappeared or sent to a re-education camp. They have plenty of them in Xinjiang. Few guessed it then, but that banner calling for an end to draconian zero COVID policies and the removal of Xi as leader was a warning of what was to come. An explosion of anger as 3 years of failing lockdowns became too much to bear. So you seem to be correct. They're frustrated over the lockdowns. And I think it's good that people in China are frustrated over the lockdowns. And I think it's good that China took this no COVID policy, because they showed that no matter how much you lock down, no matter what you do, you cannot stop COVID-19.
Yeah, that's the point that we made last week when they were revealing that now COVID cases are at a record high in China. So this whole zero COVID theory, or this approach that they have there, which is to lock everyone down in massive cities until COVID reaches zero, has not been successful.
No, and if going that far to that extreme 100% in order to stop it isn't successful, then why do people think the halfway approaches of sort of locking down or closing the bar early on this night or that night, why would they have any more success? It's not going to work. Just stop the lockdowns. That's what we've learned.
It was always about control and never about safety.
When you're depressed, your immune system is suppressed as well. Mm-hmm. So these people, I mean, they're not allowed to leave their houses and stuff like that. That's just going to make them more susceptible to get COVID.
But if we lived in a fair world, we would be looking at articles coming out around the clock about how all of this is demonstrable scientific proof that lockdowns do not work. Instead, they're not actually, pointing that out. Demonstrations against Xi, his oppressive COVID crackdowns, and increasingly authoritarian rule are now sweeping the country, with activists taking to the streets of Beijing, Shanghai, Wuhan, and Nanjing in an unprecedented wave of dissent. Xi has yet to acknowledge the marches, but few expect him to back down. They won't back down. They'll just roll out the military and they'll kill everyone who protests.
Did it say how many?
It has not given a number. Dr. Alan Mendoza warned Mail Online that Beijing will crack down hard and punish the protesters severely, as state media today ran editorials defending zero COVID. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what they will do. Dr. Mendoza...
They cannot admit they were wrong.
No.
They will double and triple down.
They're the god in the Chinese system. The government's infallible.
Well, this system also didn't admit that they were wrong either, right? They just changed the message. So in the United States, they first said, the vaccines will be 100% effective. And then it was, 96% and then 80% or whatever, right? Like the effectiveness number just kept on dropping.
Then eventually, you'll get it, but it won't be as bad.
Yeah. First they said you wouldn't get it at all. And then they just keep changing
and
what
now
they're saying.
It's the majority of people dying of COVID-19 are vaccinated.
But they never apologize, right? They never say, oh, whoops, we were wrong about this. Here's what's actually the case. They
never will.
The story.
And that frustrated me so much when that little Amnesty article came out, because so many libertarians online got so excited about this. Like, no, I won't forget. You made old people die alone and stuff. Dude, they didn't care about your opinions 2 years ago. They don't care now. You're taking this one little article that didn't even say I was wrong, I'm sorry. It just said, I wasn't completely wrong. I was justified in being afraid then, but I wouldn't do it again now. It was not the backpedaling they thought it was. They took all of that and they extrapolated out to this wide us versus them thing where they're demanding, they're asking for amnesty and we're refusing to do. They didn't care then. They don't care now.
It is just one person that wrote an article.
Yeah. It was. No other mainstream media talking head has released a similar article since then. It was just the one, and there was no amnesty or offer of amnesty. It wasn't a discussion that anyone had except the libertarians who didn't understand that they're irrelevant to the discussion at hand. It didn't matter that we didn't want to comply with their stuff in the first place. Why would it matter now?
Look, I want to clarify. I'm willing to forgive.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I don't forget.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I remember, and we should not forget what these people did, and remember who was on what side at the times. If they didn't switch the sides and say they were sorry, then they should not be forgotten.
I don't know if I can forgive someone for someone else. I don't know if that's a possibility. How can I
only forgive for yourself?
Exactly, and I'm just saying, I don't feel like I ever have to change how I feel at all about them doing things like not letting people go see their husband of 50,000 years or whatever die, or go to the funeral or touch each other during the funeral. If that didn't happen to me, but I can't forgive someone for... I feel just the same as before, and I really hate them.
Well, hate doesn't help anybody out, that's for sure. More coming up. It's Free Talk Live. Why did you move to the Shire?
I moved here to the Shire because there's other people around who take liberty just as seriously as I do.
I moved to the Shire because I saw videos of people challenging authority and thought that I could get support myself. It called to me, do this right now.
I wanted to be around people like me who got it. And once I got here, I knew there was nowhere else that I wanted to be.
I've always wanted to change the world. So I moved to the Shire to join people who were actually working towards doing the same thing.
The people here are awesome, loving, and positive. It was for the adventure and for the feeling of something important is happening here. And I just wanted to come to sort of be part of that.
Visit ShireSociety.com to read and sign the Shire Society Declaration and learn the reasons why, if you love liberty, you should immigrate to the Shire. Plus, connect with others via the forum at ShireSociety.com. That's ShireSociety.com. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com. If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
So the protection of life, liberty, and property is what the Free State Project is all about. But it's an effort to move 20,000 people who understand.
It's about demonstrating to the entire country
that, yeah, we can have a free market, a truly free market. Making it just a freer, great place to live.
It's the world's largest voluntarist libertarian community, and it's only getting bigger.
That's amazing, to be able to move to a place where other people passionately believe in being free and independent.
What the Free State Project is managing to do, though, is to put their money where their mouth is. It's physically getting up across the country and saying, let's go someplace and let's demonstrate the power of these ideas. There's a lot of kind of philosophy that surrounds liberty. There's a lot of thinking about it and talking about it. But here in New Hampshire, people are doing it.
101 Reasons Liberty Lives in New Hampshire, a documentary by Free State Project Early Movers. Watch it free at 101reasonsfilm.com. 101reasonsfilm.com. What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191. The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
This is Free Talk Live. People in China, cities across China, mass protests against COVID-19 restrictions. They are chanting, "We want freedom," in the streets. And I was really happy to see that in one of the
Wait,
photos.
are they chanting that in English?
No.
I don't
it
think so. It does sound like
yeah.
freedom, doesn't it? I'll play it back again here. It's only like a 17-second clip.
It wouldn't make sense, but...
Here we go. Yeah, it does have a similar.
It does kind of sound like want freedom.
Yeah.
Yeah, but maybe not.
I just assumed that it wasn't Chinese, and I couldn't understand any words in it, so I assumed that. But
this was retweeted by Northrop Gundam, which is a channel that had a lot of some of the craziest videos earlier this year. They're on Twitter. Gundam Northrop is the actual username. And they had shown some of the insane stuff during the Shanghai lockdown.
Is he still there?
I don't think he or whoever it is that runs the channel is located there.
I would advise them to not be there.
I think whoever runs that channel is just collecting videos that they can
were
find.
there.
I don't believe
Shanghai.
that's the case.
Oh,
I don't believe that's the case. Based on the way that the posts have sort of been written, it just always seems like it's someone who's on the outside that's sharing really interesting videos from China.
Probably someone who's from China or at least has family members there.
There's a still image here from this one of these protests, and I'm happy to say that of the people that are shown in this image, and there's dozens and dozens and dozens, all you can see is people here. I don't see very many masks. So,
well, if they're fed up with COVID restrictions, then it makes sense they wouldn't be wearing the single biggest statement of pacification.
Agreed.
Submission.
But there were some, and that was disturbing to me.
Yeah, it does make sense what you're saying, Arya, but as Bonnie pointed out, in other videos of quote-unquote protests or like people leaving the factory and that sort of thing, 100% of people were still wearing masks in some other videos from China. So I'm refreshed to see that there are indeed people.
Maybe that was like their first step of rebellion ever in their lives, for all we know.
Yeah,
so
it could very well have been.
They just weren't good at it yet.
Yep. Yeah.
I mean, it does feel good, man. And
saying no?
Yeah, and a lot of these people in China will just never have experienced it. Hell, a lot of Americans have never experienced it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But just having some authority figure tell you to do something, no matter how arbitrary it is, just pick something minor and say no.
Yep.
Not something. I'm not saying pour that quart of oil down your sink or anything like that, but find something that's important to you that you can disobey on and not be facing the gallows over, and disobey. See how it feels.
One no definitely can lead to another no.
And it does.
This is what I like to do whenever I just want to do something, is just look both ways when I'm at a red light, look behind me, make sure there's not a cop behind me, and just go.
Yeah,
dude. Okay. The place at which I work recently relocated, and as a result of that, my ride home from work changed, and my path to get to the bank to make the nightly deposit changed.
Right.
So now it leads me directly through this red light here at Central Square, and it's one of these.
It's one of the worst lights.
It is one of the absolute worst lights. But I run it every single night.
Nice.
And I've seen so many people who, I hate it when I have somebody in front of me because I know they're just going to stop and wait on it to turn green.
It sucks.
And it can take several minutes because it doesn't have any sensors to tell them that, there's someone. Yeah. It will sit there for a full 2.5, 3 minutes before it turns green. I'm sitting there just like, dude, go. There's no one around. If there's a cop, all you have to do is say, dude, it wasn't turning. There's no one around, so I went. And they almost certainly won't ticket you for that. Maybe
they will, maybe they won't.
But see, I turn right there. So yes, cops listening, my thing will always be, I didn't realize I couldn't turn right on red there. Because you can turn right on red at every other intersection in New Hampshire and almost in the United States. But at this one, they're like, no right turn. And I understand it when it's busy, when there's hundreds of cars traveling through Central Square. But when it's 2:00 in the morning and there's no one around, I'm going to conveniently forget that sign exists. And I'm just going to, out of habit, turn right at the red.
The one stipulation is you have to stop and then turn right on the ones where you're allowed to turn right.
I tend to come to a complete stop at red lights and stop signs anyway because there's a lot of stupid people out there, and not all of them come to a complete stop. I learned this in Mississippi because I lived right next to a four-way stop. I was the only house on this street that made it a four-way stop. Otherwise, it would have just been a three-way stop. No one ever came to a complete stop through this intersection because they were just like, well, no one else is ever coming from another direction that's going to matter. So anytime I had to actually come out of my house to go somewhere and get on that road, being the only house on that road, if I didn't come to a complete stop and make my presence known, they would have just plowed straight into me. Never would have even seen me. And so I've learned over time to just come to a complete stop, look around, make sure the idiots are aware of my presence, and then carry on.
If only more people would just drive safely, right? Like just drive as the conditions require. If there's no one around, just blow through the damn stoplight. Who cares?
That's all it takes. Just pay attention to your surroundings. Yeah, that's it. Just pay attention to your surroundings. Put down your phone.
The only reason I wouldn't do it is, like Bonnie said, if there's definitely a cop right behind you or whatever. Or if my vision's obscured, like if there's something crazy on the corner and I can't see around it and I'm not sure if a car is coming or not, I'll go ahead and wait there. But if I can see it, whatever.
That's fair. I did not run the red light one night when a cop had come by from the other direction because I'm not trying to break the law here. I'm legitimately not. I'm just not trying to waste a bunch of unnecessary time.
Yeah, we've all got things to do.
Yeah.
So back to the story here about China. You had just started sharing a little bit with us here, Aria, and that is that there's massive protests in the streets in Chinese cities. Finally, after months of on and off again lockdowns, now with apparently 400 million people in various different states of lockdown. What else do we need to know?
Well, Dr. Mendoza is who this article is citing quite a lot. So you may have a different article that is a better source of information. He's the director of the foreign policy think tank, the Henry Jackson Society, and I don't know why they're asking him or what expertise he has, but he says, this is a serious concern for Xi, given he has just set himself up as dictator for life and would not have been expecting such open dissent. However, it is not existential, as his surveillance and enforcement state will inevitably crack down hard and punish the protesters severely. China was able to decimate Hong Kong from afar, and that's the true tragedy here that I kind of forgot that even happened. That's how successful China rolled over Hong Kong.
Well, think about it from this perspective, though. These people, maybe they realized they had nothing to lose, right? You're literally being locked in your apartment.
Yep.
To the point where there's another one that just happened. Another apartment fire just happened. I don't remember which city it was, but there's video, and people were locked into this apartment building. Thing caught on fire, and you can't get out. So unless you're willing to jump for it.
In which case you're probably going to die anyway.
I bet some people tried that because you're definitely going to burn to death.
Well, yeah, like 9/11, people did jump out the windows.
Right.
And it was really scary.
So, like, you literally have nothing to lose.
There's no worse choice. And the Chinese government is forcing this choice on their people. Do you want to die in a fire or by falling and breaking your neck?
Yeah, I mean, the building probably isn't going to catch on fire, but in the meantime, you have no life. You've had your life stripped from you. You cannot go to work, or in some cases, you're forced to stay at work, like in the Foxconn facility where they're not allowed to leave where they work. So you're either forced to work constantly or you cannot work at all. And this is not a life, right? Like, not being able to choose is not a life. So taking away people's freedom, and of course, the most critical freedom is the one to be able to say no to something, whatever it is that you're being told to do, or
it's autonomy over your life. It's your own willpower.
In this case, you don't even have the freedom to leave your apartment. So it doesn't surprise me that finally the obedient
Let's clarify, you
people
can't even go out into your hallway in your apartment complex. You are literally stuck in a lot of these cases in your actual literal apartment. And if you want to go out into your hallway, well, you just can't.
Maybe somebody will snitch on you if you try. I don't know how many of them are physically locked into the hallways, but certainly the gates have been put up at the fronts of the apartment buildings. You can't go outside.
They're putting tamper-proof tape on people's refrigerators and stuff. It's completely insane behavior.
So it doesn't surprise me that, given the fact that they have literally had their entire lives taken from them, all in the name of quote-unquote zero COVID, that finally these people, the obedient population of China, has finally decided to start disobeying. So it's really exciting. It's nice to see this. There's more videos here that I'm hopefully will be able to pull up to get a feel for what's going on out there. But we're going to tell you more about it coming up here in moments. And you can join the show. The number is 603-283-6160. There were not a lot of protests like this in the United States, by the way. Like, there's a large number of people out in the streets.
Well, in defense of the U.S., the states here did not quite go as far as China did with its lockdowns.
Not as far, but also the reactions weren't as severe, right? Like, the people were just like, they put up with it. There's more coming up here in moments. You can join the show. Hour 2 is on the way. It's Free Talk Live.
Negotiation isn't just something union leaders and sports agents do. Your entire day is a series of negotiations. If you have young children, you know that. In fact, your kids can teach you a lot about negotiating with grown-ups. According to the world's greatest negotiator, Herb Cohen, author of You Can Negotiate Anything. Herb says that kids understand the process of decision-making within an organization. When one parent says no, they'll ask the other. And Cohen says children persist and persevere. And like smart negotiators of all ages, kids know that no is an opening bargaining position. With money and attention so scarce now, effective communication skills have never been more important, especially if you're a job seeker. For more tips, hit survivalspeech.com. I'm Holland Cook.
Are you tired of your taxes funding endless occupations around the world? Antiwar.com is run by people who understand that wars abroad become wars at home, wars on our freedoms. Antiwar.com is dedicated to bringing you the latest in news, views, interviews, and reviews from the top movers and shakers in the anti-occupation movement. Antiwar.com has it all, from thorough foreign policy analysis to interviews with whistleblowers who used to run the military-industrial complex. Anti-war, pro-free market. That's antiwar.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Chris Jones. Large-scale protests across China against the government's strict COVID-19 restrictions continue. Police have arrested several demonstrators in what's seen as unprecedented civil disobedience under the leader of Xi Jinping. Patrick Falk reports from Hong Kong.
These protests are gathering momentum. It is taking place in various cities across the mainland, including Chengdu, Wuhan, on university campuses in Beijing. Many people also defying health officials' advice to stay indoors because of the spread of the virus in Beijing's Chaoyang district. And of course, also in Shanghai, where protests have arguably been more confrontational on Urumqi Road. All this triggered by the apartment fire that took place in Urumqi, the capital of Xinjiang province. But these protests aren't just about COVID curbs and what happened in Urumqi. People are also voicing discontent over censorship, with a lot of people symbolically holding up blank pieces of paper.
The armed forces could be brought in to help the UK's health service during upcoming strikes. Health and defence officials are drawing up contingency plans, which could see personnel filling in for ambulance drivers and frontline hospital roles. Nurses are set to hold strike action over pay before Christmas. Business Secretary Grant Shapps says the military would only be used as a last resort.
The NHS always gets ready for any potential disruption, so it's not unusual to sort of game these things out. There's no plan at the moment to call in the army. What is important, though, is I think, ideally to get this situation resolved. Nobody wants to see the NHS disrupted, I suspect, least of all the nurses.
Britain's electricity operator has stopped short of triggering its emergency winter scheme, which would have required households and businesses to cut their energy usage. A warning had been issued that such steps could be necessary to avoid blackouts in the country on Tuesday. And the Biden administration has quietly approved plans to build the largest oil export terminal in the United States. Here's FSN's Tony Waterman in Texas.
The Seaport Oil Terminal, known as SPOT, would have the capacity to export 2 million barrels barrels per day, making it the largest in the U.S. It is the first of 4 proposed terminals along Texas's Gulf Coast to be approved. The Maritime Administration says it's important to the national interest, but environmental groups have blasted the decision, pointing to a government-led impact statement released in July, which found the project would emit more than 230 million tons of carbon dioxide each year. This could jeopardize the Biden administration's goals of slashing carbon emissions in half by 2030.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks, looking today at the complexity of rooting for your team at the 2022 World Cup in Qatar if you happen to be an Iranian. The timing of the tournament, coming as it does in the middle of nationwide protests and upheaval in Iran, has created a dilemma for many Iranians who have travelled to Doha to see the games live and for those watching around the world on television. John Gazvinian is an Iranian-American author and historian whose most recent book charted the history of U.S. relations with Iran.
Nationalism and patriotism is a complicated thing for Iranians. Iran obviously had a revolution a little bit more than 40 years ago, so there are contentions over exactly what it means to be Iranian, what it means to be excited about cheering on the Iranian national team. Even things as simple as a flag. Of course, the Islamic Republic has a flag. It's the official flag of Iran, but I mean, you have people who want to wave the pre-revolutionary flag, the flag of the old Iranian monarchy. At a time like this when emotions are running very, very high, what does it actually mean to be Iranian, to come out and cheer on a national football team?
And on Friday, tensions between pro-government and anti-government fans boiled over during Iran's match against Wales, with female anti-government fans claiming harassment by pro-regime supporters. Notably on Friday, the Iranian team sang the country's national anthem, in contrast to their silence during their first World Cup fixture against England. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
To recap our top stories, large-scale protests across China against the government's strict COVID-19 restrictions have continued for a 4th day. The UK's armed forces could be brought in to help the country's health service during large upcoming nurse strikes. Britain's electricity operator has stopped short of triggering its emergency winter scheme, which would have required households and businesses to cut their energy use. And the White House has quietly approved plans to build the largest oil export terminal in the United States. That's the latest feature story news. Chris Jones reporting.
After notifying students that there will be no awesome events happening on campus this weekend, Hamilton College Activity Board Coordinator Jessica Wilson from the class of 2015 spoke to Onion reporters about the disappointingly empty days ahead.
On behalf of the entire Campus Activities Board, I would like to truly apologize for failing to live up to the standards expected of us from everyone on campus. And the fact is, we let the school down.
Wilson said that while the board is usually proficient at booking plenty of cool events for all students to participate in, the upcoming weekend will have no interesting lectures, no wrestling match against Amherst, no acoustic coffee house, and no outdoor movie screening of Silver Linings Playbook.
We tried our best to organize a foam party in Dunham Quad for Friday night, but all the foam machines were rented, and we failed. This falls on us. We realize we don't deserve your trust yet, nor do we expect it, but we'll do everything we can to restore your confidence in us, starting with a comedy hypnotist show on Thursday at Minor Theater. Tickets are $5.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live. We're kicking off the second hour of the program here. The number, if you want to join us, it's 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. You're listening to protesters.
They seem to be singing.
They are singing. Apparently, the lady who's writing these posts, her name is very unusual. It's Eva Ramaloo, Rammmeloo. She is apparently on the scene where this was a couple days ago. These were posted on November 26th. But this gives you some idea of what's going on in cities all across China. Apparently, people are sick and tired of these COVID restrictions. They're taking off masks. They're coming outside. They're protesting in large numbers. I'm not good at estimating crowd size, but the images here are tremendous. There's a lot. I mean, I would say thousands of people are out in the streets in this city, which is, she mentions it here in a moment here. She says that song, by the way, was the Internationale, but they also sang the Chinese national anthem, apparently, as well.
That's probably the only song they have.
Well,
doesn't all of their... I don't know if they're quite as bad as North Korea, but I know in North Korea, the only songs that anyone is familiar with are those that are written by the state.
Yeah, that's true.
That's the case in China, actually, because I'm pretty sure that some of them listen to K-pop.
They have pop music there. Yeah, that's true.
Oh, wait. It's not K-pop. They have their own, like, Chinese
They probably
pop.
have K-pop there, though. I mean, yeah, China doesn't
the one I
have
was thinking of.
as many restrictions as far as what you can listen to, but
they did arrest a Chinese pop star who lived in
for not
Hong
paying
Kong.
taxes.
Yeah. Oh, that was why?
Shanghai, I mean, that was a movie star. Maybe I'm thinking of somebody else. But anyway, Shanghai is where this protest is happening, by the way. It's in the neighborhood of Urumqi or something like that. Anyway, lots of people in the middle of the night here, it looks like. She says the police then divided the crowd into two parts and arrested a few people. More police arrived. They split the crowd and pushed it back. The crowd, by the way, also chanted, "Down with the party, down with Xi Jinping," according to this lady. Yep,
Go them.
Here's that particular chant. So apparently chanting "Down with Xi Jinping" and "Free Xinjiang," which is, I guess,
Xinjiang.
Yeah, an area.
Yeah, that's the province where they're rounding up all of the Muslims.
Yeah. She says the police are getting tired. One more time, she says, people chanting again. Less impressive as before, but still. Wonder what the vigil site on the corner looks like now. Seems the police have surrounded it. And then she says a new site is being set up down the road. At the south end of the street are more than 100 people. They are yelling, "We are all Chinese." The police are quietly waiting until they leave. So at this point, this was again 2 days ago, though.
Why are they yelling, "We are all Chinese"?
I think they're just trying to remind the police that they're all Chinese and, hey, stop arresting us.
I don't know. The comment about Xinjiang province makes me think maybe they're more motivated by the travesties being committed against the Uyghur Muslims than Western media is making us aware of.
Could be. She says she's heading home now, but wants to add how incredible this is. She's never seen anything like this in the decade that she has reported on China.
It's surprising. Like, they just let reporters actually report there. Like, they're letting her stand around and film this. They didn't even do that in China. I mean, in Canada. They were kicking reporters out.
This was before the apparent crackdown that's happening now. So this was 2 days ago. This was some of the initial protests. And Aria, you were sharing with us that they are bringing in, it sounds like, the military. There's images on Twitter showing amphibious assault vehicles that are filled with soldiers that are being trucked into these cities. So if they aren't,
that's what they'll do. The Chinese government will be as ruthless as it needs to be.
Yeah, I expect that when the soldiers come out, the mainstream media, if they are out on the streets, will be caught up and swept up in whatever sort of roundups and violence happens. So this is early on. There were way more people in the streets than there were police for this, so the police were simply outnumbered. Obviously, they couldn't do anything.
They might want to just get rid of the reporters before that happens anyway, so that way nobody live streams it or something.
Well,
because
that's
they
the
don't
thing.
want to know.
The video does come out anyway because even though China does have severe internet restrictions, somehow clips are getting out. They're short clips. They're 10, 15, 20 seconds long, but they are able to get those out past the censors through whatever means. Maybe they're encrypting them and passing them, to outsiders.
There's always a way.
Yeah.
That's why the battle between malware and anti-malware exists, and all sorts of other examples like that exist. The battle between the hackers and the people who are trying to write secure code. It's always going to be that way. No matter how tight people clamp down or try to protect something, there's always going to be a way around it.
She says that the anger seems too much to crack down on. Wonder what happens next. She says
we know what happens next.
Yeah. She says, first it was only a few hundred people, but they seem to be coming from far outside the city center, more than 1,000 now, she says she's estimating. And she does show a lineup of many dozens of police down there, but again, they're outnumbered. She says that she asked a police officer if he agreed with the people. He smiled with a very long silence, quote, "We can't do anything about it." And then he says, "Mei Banfa," which I don't know what that means. It must be some sort of Chinese thing. So as we learn more about this, we're definitely going to let you know what we see and what we hear. But
by
you've
Wednesday,
got more, right?
Not a whole lot more. It points out that abandoning zero COVID now would be too embarrassing and a sign of weakness for Xi Jinping.
Right. They can't admit they're wrong.
Right. Although that... And he can't bow to the protest now, least of all, because then that gives
he
the
looks
people...
even weaker.
Right.
He might act like it was his idea later, because that's kind of what Canada did.
I mean, they'll ultimately do that once all of these lockdowns. He's bound to know by this point that he can't carry it on forever. They'll send out the military and they'll crush the protesters. And then a few weeks from now, they'll go, you know what, guys? COVID's done. We did it. We got a new strain now that won't kill you nearly as much.
That's true. Yeah, they could just simply stop reporting the numbers.
Yeah,
right?
so that's exactly what they'll do. But he can't do it now. And the next thing they're going to do, by Wednesday, I would speculate, we're going to be covering stories about how they brought in the military and there have been tens of thousands of people killed by the Chinese. Yeah, by the Chinese military. I have no doubt.
Did you have more to share from the report?
Not really. The guy thinks that Xi will turn to repression of some form to stamp out further protests. I mean, of course. That's exactly what's going to happen. We've seen it since Tiananmen Square. The Chinese government won't show any mercy to these people. It will kill as many of them as it needs to in order to make the rest go home and never speak of it again.
This one from Reuters gets a little more descriptive. They say from the streets of several Chinese cities to dozens of campuses, protesters made a show of civil disobedience unprecedented since Xi Jinping assumed power a decade ago. During his tenure, Xi has overseen the quashing of dissent and expansion of a high-tech social surveillance system that has made protests more difficult and riskier. Jason Sun, a college student in Shanghai, said, quote, "What we object to is these restrictions on people's rights in the name of virus prevention and the restrictions on individual freedom and people's livelihoods." Where did this guy come from? I mean, to hear somebody in China saying something like that out loud is refreshing.
I mean, they've probably been there all along, but it's dangerous to say these things like in China.
Yeah. There was no sign of new protests on Monday in Beijing or Shanghai, but dozens of police were in the areas where demonstrations had taken place over the weekends. Police have been asking people for their phones to check if they have virtual private networks and the Telegram app, which has been used by weekend protesters, residents and social media users said.
Uninstall all VPNs as soon as you stop using them. You can reinstall it later, but you do not want the Chinese government to catch you with a VPN on your phone.
Apparently, it's actually illegal to use a VPN in China, according to this.
Well, that would make sense because if they have the Great Firewall of China and you can just go around it with a VPN, they probably don't want you to do that.
Right. And the VPN is the #1 way of getting around the Great Firewall of China.
Yep. And Telegram is blocked from China's internet. So that's why you would need the VPN. If you're going to use a blocked app, you got to have a VPN connection or they could detect the ports the packets or whatever that the Telegram is using.
And that's how stuff is getting out, and they can't really stop it.
Glad to see Telegram is once again helping people in need of communications in these circumstances. There's more coming up here in moments. It is Free Talk Live.
Free Talk Live.
Crack cocaine, the way it hurts individuals and communities, I would really like to see dealers get the death penalty.
Why are you so violent?
It's a violent drug. It gets to your brain. It reorganizes. It actually physically changes the structure of your brain.
You know, that's true with alcohol.
The community is being put in danger by the fact that these drugs are illegal. I don't use crystal meth, but I'm in danger from those who do use crystal meth in that if they need another hit and they can't afford it and their drug dealer's not willing to accept a BJ in order to give them a hit of crystal meth, then they are going to go and steal things, break into cars, break into homes. If you can't see how prohibition creates more problems than it solves, if you can't see how prohibition leads to more violence,
just look at Al Capone and the history of alcohol. Yes. It's simple.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern, live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
I've been told no in many different ways.
I give you an order and you're going to obey it.
George, you can go this way. You can't do that and you have to leave here.
You cannot bring Simon to the rally.
Walk with me. Well, I'm comfortable here, actually. Whoa. Hey. Who do you think you are? Excuse me.
There is no video and audio allowed in this office.
No, I have work today.
You ain't going to make it.
Wait a minute. Hey! Oh my God! Unbelievable! Why are you running from me? Because you scared me. What am I being detained for?
You're being served.
What is this?
You're being served.
What is this? Bureaucrats have a funny way of telling people no.
That's the sound of the men working on the chain.
Derek J's Victimless Crime Spree. Watch it for free and order the Director's Cut DVD at victimlesscrimespree.com. What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
I'm crazy about My Magic Mud. This is the most important oral care product created this millennium, and I'm not kidding. We all have different opinions on politics and issues, but we all have mouths. And I want yours to be as clean as possible, with teeth as bright as they were meant to be. I will never be without My Magic Mud. It's a little surprising, but man, does it work. If you only listen to one thing I say ever, go to mymagicmud.com and get 20% off with code FTL. mymagicmud.com, code FTL.
You can help spread the ideas of liberty with our Patreon for just $5 per month at amps.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. Phones are open here, and you can join us. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Bring up whatever is on your mind. Free Talk Live brought to you by Bitcoin.com. That's where you can go to learn about cryptocurrency like Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash, because these are technologies that are not going to just disappear because governments don't like them. And we do have a story about Bitcoin mining being suppressed in New York State coming up here. It's been banned. Some Bitcoin mining has been banned.
I really want to get into this, too, because there's so many interesting aspects of it.
Yep, well, we can talk about that coming up here. With you tonight, it's Ian.
It's Bonnie.
And Aria.
But go to Bitcoin.com, click Get Started at the top of the page, and that is where you will find some introductory videos that can help you learn the basics about decentralization and permissionless, why you shouldn't have to ask permission to be able to send value from one person to another. It's a pretty cool technology, and if you haven't taken the time to learn the basics, go to Bitcoin.com, click Get Started, right there at the top of the page. If you want the latest news headlines, they've got those for you too over at news.bitcoin.com.
If anything, this nonsense with FTX that's causing so many people to be concerned about crypto, it's one of the best examples we've yet seen of why you can't trust other people with your finances.
Exactly.
And Bitcoin gives you the power, and cryptocurrency in general gives you the power to control your own finances and not be at the mercy of some third party.
And that's why governments hate it.
It's an unparalleled amount of power to the individual. It's never existed in all of human history.
So they're doing everything they can to stop it in the United States. That includes coming after the Crypto 6. That includes going after LBRY, LBRY.com, by the SEC. So the FBI came after us. The SEC's going after LBRY. The SEC's going after a bunch of other
Ripple,
companies.
I think, is one
They're
of them.
currently going after Ripple. They've gone after others as well, trying to intimidate people into stopping development, stopping selling tokens, just basically put a whole pallor of fear over the entirety of the crypto industry. And now they're going after mining. But we were talking about what's going on in Chinese cities with massive protests against the Shanghai, or not just Shanghai by now, but there's cities all across China where there are lockdowns. We mentioned last week 400 million people are in varying different statuses of lockdown. And people are getting out in the streets now and they're saying, no, we've had enough of this. Jason Sun, college student from Shanghai, says they object to the restrictions on people's rights in the name of virus prevention and restrictions on individual freedom and people's livelihoods. Now, they are apparently calling in the military. They're trying to check people's phones, their cell phones, to see if they are running a VPN app or the Telegram app. VPNs are prohibited. Asked about widespread anger, this is from the Reuters report, over China's zero COVID policy, Foreign Ministry spokesbureaucrat Zhao Lijian told reporters, quote, "What you mentioned does not reflect what actually happened. We believe that with the leadership of the Communist Party of China and cooperation and support of the Chinese people, our fight against COVID-19 will be successful."
Yeah, just so everyone is aware, the reason they're checking for VPNs and Telegram is because they're getting ready to slaughter everyone, and they don't want video of it getting out.
Yeah, that's true. And this isn't 1989 or 88 or whenever it was that the Tank Man thing happened, where you could only rely on mainstream media and mainstream media video to possibly show you what actually was going on.
And who knows who even took that picture? Does anyone know?
It was video of Tank Man back then. And no, that's a good question. Who was that?
Nowadays, it could be like lots of people would probably be like taking a video.
Exactly. And that's the threat to the status quo. That's the threat to the state. The backlash against COVID curbs is a setback for China's efforts to eradicate the virus, which is infecting record numbers after swaths of the population have sacrificed income, mobility, and mental health to prevent it from spreading. Remember,
for years.
Well, yeah. Well, remember, people have been jumping off of their apartments because they are so driven insane by this. We knew that people in the United States were going to increase their suicide rates on the U.S. lockdowns and the U.S. restrictions, which, as you guys pointed out, were not as stringent as the ones in China, but that didn't stop people from killing themselves over not being able to see their family members and not being able to see their friends because, well, that's what they believed, right? Like, y'all still could have left your homes. You still could have gone out. We did it in Keene. We got together. We were partying in Central Square during the so-called stay-at-home orders, but
the moment they went into effect, we were out there.
That night. But Americans are so obedient, they did what they were told, and then some of them killed themselves over. Well, in China, they did what they were told, and a lot more of them were literally jumping from their apartment balconies.
Well, they didn't have a lot of options. The government took everything from them, and it made life not worth living.
It was hard to even get food.
And here in America, we only dealt with that for, like here in New Hampshire, it was maybe a 2-week period where the bars were closed. And there was never any real lockdown in New Hampshire like there was in other places.
Yeah.
But these people, but there's no comparison to anywhere in the United States and what has happened in China, where people have been, and this may not have happened to all of them, but people were, in fact, welded into their homes. They had their doors welded shut with pieces of steel bars put up to keep them from getting out. So they were like actually literally trapped in their homes.
And I can't believe I forgot to comment on it earlier, but earlier when you read an ad for the homeschooling program, it said 18% of kids in public schools are suicidal. That's like huge.
19%, yep.
And that's, just because they're forced to have to go to this institution every day.
Yep.
That's not the same as being forced to be trapped in your house every day, but I'm just making a comparison because like homeschooled kids, I'm sure you could find the numbers that there isn't 19% that are suicidal.
No, the institution of schooling is so stupid. I recently got all of my transcripts from like elementary all the way up to high school for complicated, nonsensical reasons. But anyway, I got them. And I was curious, so I looked through them. And sure enough, it's clear that whenever there was a new subject, I was heavily interested. I had 98s, 97s, whatever. But by the 6th year of English And the same math, my grades began falling. But then, here's geometry. Here's a new type of math that you've never done before. Grade skyrockets. Oh, but here's geometry too. The same thing, but for the special people who didn't quite get it the first time. So now we're going to drag this one class out into 2 and make you take it again. 67.
Wow.
And it's just like that repeatedly. English 1, 100. English 2, 95. English 3, 42. Because I wouldn't do the work. Because why would I do this again? We did the same crap last year, and the same with U.S. history. And
Turns out you can speak English pretty well.
It seems that way. Yeah. And as I looked through that transcript, that was just the one pattern that was apparent to me, was that anytime there was something new for me to learn, some new class, keyboarding or whatever, I was heavily interested in it, and my grades skyrocketed. But high schools in America, it's just a series of repetition where you learn the same crap, the same U.S. geography, the same U.S. history year after year after year. I can't blame anyone for killing themselves when they have to deal with that. That's their entire life up to that point. Welcome to the world. Now go be bored to death 8 hours a day. By the way, this is your life now.
The other thing that's so stupid about the American homeschooling system, public schooling system, which might explain that a little maybe, I know that I did this, is that you could figure out what you needed to pass, then just get your 67, or what you needed for whatever, like if you, like I was valedictorian and I like failed my last class I was ever in because I was just like, oh, I just realized I don't need to pass this,
So why bother?
So why would I do any work or show up?
My last realization was that none of it mattered, and it didn't matter if I passed any of it, so I just stopped going.
The number is 603-283-6160.
You were valedictorian?
Of 8 people.
Still, congrats.
There's more coming up here in moments, and we got a little bit more on the Chinese protests that may or may not be ongoing. We don't really know because, well, it's hard to get good information out of China. That's still to come, plus the Bitcoin mining ban. On Free Talk Live, we're bringing people to the ideas of liberty every day. From wrestling superstars like Glenn Jacobs.
You guys really are having an impact, I believe. Like I said, a lot of where I am now is due to listening to Free Talk Live. You changed my mind on some very important issues years ago.
To random people tuning in on the radio.
I was kind of stuck in the left-right paradigm. I heard your show by chance on a Saturday night. From there, I went on, joined the Free State Project, and become an amplifier. So, I mean, that's really the reason why I amp is because I know that if it wasn't for you guys being on as many stations as you are, I never would have found the ideas of liberty.
You can help more people hear the message of liberty by joining Free Talk Live's AMPS program on Patreon for as little as $5 a month. And you'll get access to special perks. Visit amps.freetalklive.com, amps.freetalklive.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Chris Jones. Large-scale protests across China against the government's strict COVID-19 restrictions continue. Police have arrested several demonstrators in what's seen as unprecedented civil disobedience under the leader of Xi Jinping. Patrick Falk reports from Hong Kong.
These protests are gathering momentum. It is taking place in various cities across the mainland, including Chengdu, Wuhan, on university campuses in Beijing. Many people also defying health officials' advice to stay indoors because of the spread of the virus in Beijing's Chaoyang district. And of course, also in Shanghai, where protests have arguably been more confrontational on Urumqi Road. All this triggered by the apartment fire that took place in Urumqi, the capital of Xinjiang province. But these protests aren't just about COVID curbs and what happened in Urumqi. People are also voicing discontent over censorship, with a lot of people symbolically holding up blank pieces of paper.
The armed forces could be brought in to help the UK's health service during upcoming strikes. Health and defence officials are drawing up contingency plans, which could see personnel filling in for ambulance drivers and frontline hospital roles. Nurses are set to hold strike action over pay before Christmas. Business Secretary Grant Shapps says the military would only be used as a last resort.
The NHS always gets ready for any potential disruption, so it's not unusual to sort of game these things out. There's no plan at the moment to call in the army. What is important, though, is I think ideally to get this situation resolved. Nobody wants to see the NHS disrupted. I suspect least of all the nurses.
Britain's electricity operator has stopped short of triggering its emergency winter scheme, which would have required households and businesses to cut their energy usage. A warning had been issued that such steps could be necessary to avoid blackouts in the country on Tuesday. And the Biden administration has quietly approved plans to build the largest oil export terminal in the United States. Here's FSN's Tony Waterman in Texas.
The Seaport Oil Terminal, known as SPOT, would have the capacity to export 2 million barrels per day, making it the largest in the U.S. It is the first of 4 proposed terminals along Texas's Gulf Coast to be approved. The Maritime Administration says it's important to the national interest, but environmental groups have blasted the decision, pointing to a government-led impact statement released in July, which found the project would emit more than 230 million tons of carbon dioxide each year. This could jeopardize the Biden administration's goals of slashing carbon emissions in half by 2030.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
This is Free Talk Live. You can join the show. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. With you in the studio tonight, it's Ian.
It's Bonnie.
And Arya. And it sounds like I'm going to have to watch whatever you're watching. If it affected you this much, it must be just devastating.
I'll describe it. That'll be, I think, sufficient for you. So we're talking about the Chinese protests, people in the streets finally protesting against the COVID restrictions. But, some people, they can take abuse themselves, to a large extent. They can put up with abuse to humans. They can watch other people being harmed, and they can, look the other way and go about their lives. But when they finally see an animal being tortured, then that might push them over the edge. Because I remember it was years ago, I don't remember, it might have been more than 10 years ago, it was Afghanistan or Iraq or something like that. Do you guys remember the story about the soldier that threw a puppy off a cliff or something like that?
Yeah. And he was actually punished for that. Though now the military, if I remember correctly, may be charged.
Yeah, there was a lot of outrage, understandably,
but bombing apartment buildings that had kids in them, not
sure, wedding parties, all that stuff, no big deal. But throw a dog off a cliff.
The apartment complexes might have had dogs too. It's just that
you didn't get to see it.
Yeah, you could see it,
and so I don't even. Was there video of it? I think there might have been.
I don't recall now. I just remember the story.
Yeah,
and there were actually consequences for the guy.
Correct. So earlier this year, when the Shanghai lockdowns were happening, we covered those in as great a detail as we could, given that we're not actually there. Sharing some of the audio and what it was going on, describing some of these insane videos. If you recall, there were some pretty torturous kind of pet videos that came out where the Chinese guards, the sort of, let's call them white guards, these are men that are in these white hazmat suits that are the ones that are doing all of the locking people into their apartment complexes, arresting people, beating people, forcing workers at Foxconn to go back into the facilities. All of the videos that you see, they're also the ones that are walking and or riding down streets with these spray guns that are just puffing whatever this chemical is into the air along city streets.
So they're demons masquerading as human beings.
They are
for all intents and purposes.
Horrible humans. For sure, demon may very well be the right word.
I don't believe in demons in any metaphysical sense, but I mean, these are people who are clearly psychopaths.
They have no touch with humanity.
Yeah.
None.
And at that point, I got to say, you're a demon.
Yeah. So, and some of the videos we saw was of these men, going around the streets, collecting dogs and doing it in a very violent manner.
I understand, to an extent, if all, I don't remember the population of Shanghai, let's say
25 million, I think it was.
Let's say all 25 million people in Shanghai just vanish. The rapture happens and it turns out that Shanghai's where all the Christians are. Fine, okay. That leaves a lot of dogs and cats that someone's got to deal with. And the best way of dealing with that, unless you're just going to let them all starve to death, which is one way of letting that happen, is to just go in and cull them. But if you're going to do that, you got to do it in a humane kind of way. quickly, efficiently.
Yeah, no.
A bullet to the head.
It's not happening here.
That would be the way to deal with that. Or do what I would do and just let nature take its course, because, yes, that's a horrible problem, but it will eventually fix itself.
That happened too. Remember, there was a video of dogs that were torturing a cat, basically. They had cornered a cat.
I don't like the word torturing, because they weren't torturing the cat.
That's right, because they don't have this. They don't have the sense of right and wrong. They're trying to eat.
Yeah,
sure.
They were looking for a meal, and I hate it for the cat, right? And I hate that I'm saying that the dogs weren't torturing the cat, because to the cat's point of view, it was being tortured.
Yeah.
But like that was just
they
nature.
Didn't have the human intention of torture.
Yeah, that was just nature being nature, and as appalling as that is, and as much as I would prefer that cat to live, nature's going to do what nature does.
Yeah, and that's fine. And but humans should be able to rise above that.
Yes.
And
despite
in this case,
being animals and despite being part of nature, we do have this apparently almost unique gift. It's not fully unique, but we do have this gift of morality and compassion and the ability to empathize with other living beings.
So now, video again posted by Northrop Gundam on Twitter. The channel is Gundam Northrop, and it's entitled "Evil White Guards Torture and Kill Dogs 2," and then it is video taken from high up. I would say, a couple dozen stories, or some apartment complex or whatever, and it shows multiple men on the ground, all in white, and there's one of them that has a dog on some sort of a leash or string or something like that, and he's literally just swinging it around, and then he just runs it into the side of something, and just continues to just swing this what appears to be, at some point, was living animal in just brutal violence against this animal, and it's just absolutely horrifying. So maybe that's motivating some people to get out into the streets, but some people are in the streets in various different cities in China right now, and of course the military is being likely called out. If they haven't reached them already, we will keep you in the loop as we learn more about this. But I want to share more from this Reuters story, because to their credit, they are reporting on this. But of course, they're Reuters, and they, you should still take things with a grain of salt, what it is that they have to say. So here they say...
They're on the Chinese government's side as much as they can be.
Here they say the zero-COVID policy has kept China's official death toll records in the thousands. Well, that's not necessarily the reason why it's been in the thousands. They can tell you whatever number they want to tell you.
Plus, we don't have any way to compare with a world where they didn't lock down. Would it still be in the thousands? Would it be less?
Well, right. And then they compare it against more than 1 million deaths in the United States.
Where we didn't, where they lied in the opposite direction.
And again, we knew that they were inflating those numbers, right? Yep. We know that the quote-unquote COVID deaths are probably 90+% people who died from being overweight and heart problems and, old age, but they had COVID, so they marked them down as a COVID-related death. So we know that number's way blown out of proportion.
We know there are people that got hit by cars and stuff like that and still got marked as a COVID death.
So imagine being Reuters and actually believing these government numbers. That's what they're doing here.
I can't imagine believing any government's numbers from a point of view of a journalist. A journalist, of all people, should know better.
Right.
But just an average citizen should go, no, I don't trust any of you lying governments.
But has come at the cost of confining many millions to long spells at home, bringing extensive disruption and damage to the world's second largest economy. Abandoning it, meaning the zero COVID policy, would mean rolling back a policy championed by Xi Jinping, the Chinese president. It would also risk overwhelming hospitals and lead to widespread illness and deaths in a country with hundreds of millions of elderly and low levels of immunity to COVID.
I wonder why they have such low levels of immunity to COVID.
Because they aren't allowed to go outside and get sunlight, maybe?
Imagine that. But look, they've had 2 years to build the temporary hospitals or whatever, to train up the medical staff they would need. They've had plenty of time to deal with whatever surge these hospitals are likely to get as a result of reopening. Have they built even one hospital? Because that was why we locked down in the United States. Yes, they did.
They literally have built quarantine camps now in the middle of highways. There was a image of this.
That way no one can get out.
Well, that's one thing, but number two, it's a flat ground. It's already been cleared, so they literally are building these COVID quarantine camps straight up down superhighways.
That's so weird. I remember during the first lockdowns we heard about that were really bad. that they were getting people off of highways and people were running out of their cars.
In China, you mean?
Yeah.
Yep.
And I was like, what is that all about? Why are they doing this on the highway? I guess it makes sense. They're stopping people from going on them so they can build on them.
To run.
I remember it happened here in the United States, and the argument was, well, we just have to flatten the curve so that, we have more hospitals, more hospital staff, more people trained to deal with it. We can build up these temporary hospitals. Not a single new medical building was installed or built anywhere. Medical staff was fired instead of being hired.
The temporary hospitals were ghost towns. There was no one there. Many analysts say, oh, by the way, state media, here's a surprise, they didn't even mention the protests in China. Instead, urging citizens and editorials to stick to the COVID rules. Many analysts say China is unlikely to reopen before March or April and needs an effective vaccination campaign before that. So if they're not going to unlock things before March or April, you should expect the COVID protests may be getting more intense. And of course, the crackdowns may be imminent. We'll continue here in moments. This is Free Talk Live. The Free State Project has reached its goal of 20,000 liberty lovers who've pledged to move to New Hampshire and get active to achieve liberty in our lifetime. Perhaps you're trying to figure out what part of New Hampshire should be your destination. If so, consider Keene. You'll find more than 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com. Keene is famous for its historic, publicity-generating activism, as well as being the liberty media capital of the world. It's home to freekeene.com, New Hampshire's destination for liberty activism, news, and opinion. For years, we've been compiling over 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com, where you'll learn about some of what's happening here and what makes Keene a great place to live. If you love liberty, you'll probably enjoy anywhere you end up in the Shire. But do your due diligence first. Please visit move.freekeene.com for the full list of over 150 reasons to move to Keene. That's move.freekeene.com.
There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer-term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. chat.lrn.fm.
The ultimate bargain is free. I'm Holland Cook with Inflation Hacks. Before you can fully type the Buy Nothing Project, Google will finish it for you. It's that popular now. Their mission statement is buy less, share more. It makes us all richer and our planet cleaner. You can give away or ask for whatever you want free. Appliances, workout gear, concert and event and travel tickets, and intangibles. Offer the world your photo or poem or short story. Offer people near you that stack of bricks or fish tank you want to get rid of. Check it out at buynothingproject.org and the Buy Nothing app for Apple and Android devices. And poke around Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist. How are you coping? Post your inflation hacks at andyoucanquoteme.com.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in Liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live. You can join the show. You can bring up whatever you want. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. I want to say thank you to MI Free to Go, somebody who is a supporter of the Free Talk Live AMPS program. You can go to amps.freetalklive.com and join AMPS. AMPS stands for Advertise, Market, Promote, and Support. You can join it as MI Free to Go has done, and do it for as little as $5 a month. So really appreciate that. It helps us get the word out about freedom. If you appreciate the work that we do here on Free Talk Live, that's the best way to support the show, is go to amps.freetalklive.com. Of course, you can also share the show. We certainly appreciate that way of support as well. It's Ian, Bonnie, and Aria in the studio tonight. Of course, you can sign up for our Patreon via debit card, credit card, PayPal. Just go to amps.freetalklive.com and you get some perks like access to the AMP-only podcast, which is an RSS feed that has the full radio show archives without recorded commercials. Once again, it's amps.freetalklive.com. Major Payne is on the line in Michigan. Go ahead, Major.
Hey, and
what's on your mind?
Yeah, I called in about the assault of the brains, the craniums of our children in the public school system, because I was one of those frustrated childs. But me and the captain last night, we were bouncing around this Chinese basketball, and you're absolutely right. I think the breaking point for most of them was they're shooting my damn dog.
Well, that was for some of them. According to the Reuters report, a lot of the people took to the streets after a fire in an apartment building in the city of Urumqi that killed, well, at least 10 people that they're reporting. So, again, these apartment complexes, many of them have been physically locked down with metal gates, literally blocking people from leaving.
I know. They welded them all in. They and even if they didn't weld them in their particular apartment, they welded the floor shut so you couldn't go and visit your downstairs neighbor.
Yeah. Yep.
And then they welded the entrance to the thing so where one guy had the key to go out and pick up the food if it was even worth picking up,
Yep, it's crazy.
And you got all these wild dogs running the streets.
It's unbelievably inhumane.
Yeah. But it was God, I can't even think of the proper word right now.
Evil.
But I mean,
it was nothing short of evil what the Chinese government has done to people in China.
Damn dog. And there's all these people. I love my pets.
Yep.
I've been a dog man all my life, and they have personalities, and they love you just as much as you love them. You know, if you want to chain a dog underneath an old truck and feed him gunpowder, he's going to be one angry bastard.
Yeah.
But, is your point that it's not as big of a deal to kill a dog as it is to kill a human? Because I could make the same exact argument.
I think
that's where he's getting.
No. I'll tell you what, honey. The government thinks it's okay to kill babies and puppies. But you can't throw your dog off the bridge without being prosecuted. There's a woman just...
But you can't throw your baby off a bridge without being prosecuted either, Major Payne.
Right, I know, but there was a woman here just 2 weeks ago, I think it was, in Michigan. She's got a puppy, and she takes her teenage son on a ride with her. And there's video of her. She walks away as the kid's standing next to the edge of the bridge, and he throws the puppy off the bridge.
Oh, my God.
Wow, she needs to put him in a mental hospital.
Somehow or another, the cops were alerted quick enough. They rescued the dog, thank God.
Wow.
And the cop that rescued him adopted the puppy. But shame on them people. And the broad's going to jail, as well she should.
Why? What did she do?
Yeah, what did she do?
But the thing is,
What did she do in your world?
Did she consent to the dog being killed?
yeah, she drove the kid out there and told him to throw the puppy off the bridge.
Okay. You left that
That's
part of your
messed
story
up,
out.
yeah.
It sounds like they were just having a family outing, and as you said, she turned away, and the kid was like, okay, well, I'm done with this.
Just describing the video as I saw it.
Okay.
They pulled up on the bridge. They walked up to the edge. Mother walked away, got back in the truck. Kid dropped the thing upside. But my point is,
Why would they make a video of it?
she scarred
crazy.
that child.
Yeah, that's horrifying. How old was this kid?
I don't know. I'm thinking 15, 16.
Okay.
Old enough to know better.
He's old enough to say no. He was old enough to refuse that.
but
So,
but
as far as
but
I'm concerned,
not
he's a
old-
co-conspirator. It's one thing if you're, forcing your 6-year-old to throw a dog off a bridge because you're going to take their toys away or whatever it is you're threatening them with. You're going to beat them. But to do it to a 15 or 16-year-old, I'm going to go ahead and say that person's just as culpable.
But getting back to China, because Major was taking a long time to make his point, so I thought he was going to say the fact that dogs being killed is some people in China's line is like some kind of bad thing. I don't think that's what he's saying now, but I don't think it's a bad thing. I think that some people...
people have to wake up.
It's just the fact that people can see other people as able to defend themselves and things like that, and they realize that a dog absolutely can't defend itself against a person with a big stick or anything like that that's bigger than them and has the processes to think ahead better than them. And
I don't think it's a defense thing. I think it's just that we recognize the innocence of non-humans. I mean, humans know we're not innocent. As the Christians say, everyone is a sinner, and I would say, everyone does immoral things occasionally, even if they try not to. Everyone has done at least one immoral thing at some point. But animals, non-humans, they don't even have the concept of morality. Right. They're truly innocent.
Well, it's both.
So when you torture a dog, you are torturing something that is just purely innocent, and I think that's what pushes people over the line.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's the same as a baby because the baby is innocent and it also can't fight back, which makes it a lot. It makes a lot of people a lot more mad about it when
a dog could fight back. I mean, there's plenty of dogs that could absolutely destroy some of these humans.
Some of these guys have weapons that are much more advanced. All right, Major, anything else? Go ahead.
As far as the dogs and the cops go, dogs and wolves live on a pack mentality. But there's honor in the pack. And amongst people, when they pack, the honor is scant at best.
And dogs also don't have a sense of honor, but...
Thank you for the call tonight. I do appreciate hearing from you. The number here is 603-283-6160, but his point is, people getting into a group, they get worse. They tend to get worse, right? There's
morality is the first thing that gets thrown out.
Right, mob mentality, and people don't think, they just do what they're told, or they go along with the group's leaders and things like that, and that's why you have these psychopaths. Even if all of the white guards aren't total psychopaths, the ones that were standing around while this other one was torturing a dog are just as guilty for not stepping in and stopping this lunatic from doing what he was doing. So,
there was that Australian story where I think it was out of Australia, maybe New Zealand. They were supposed to move pets from one shelter to another, and instead they took 28 of them out and they just shot them.
Yeah, it was Australia.
Yeah, at least then they shot them, and people were outraged over that because they were adoptable pets, and they should have just taken them to another shelter, but because COVID rules, we can't cross into another territory.
Travel,
that's what they ended up doing. But if they had to, for whatever reason, call this dog, what you described is not the way to do it. That's a bully torturing something weaker to themselves because they get off on the power.
Late Sunday, protesters clashed with police in Shanghai's commercial hub, where it's 25 million people were stuck at home earlier this year, with security forces taking away a busload of people. On Monday, they blocked some Shanghai streets, the so-called authorities, with blue metal barriers to prevent gatherings. Shops and cafes in the area were asked to close. I love how the news media always uses that term whenever it's referring to what governments do. It's never an ask.
Yeah, China just asks you to close your business.
Oh, no, could you please close your business today? No, it's not like that. It's like, you do it or we're going to torture you.
I was amazed by the number again, 25 million. Can you imagine trying to tell 25 million people what they can and can't do?
Yeah,
Why did these people just say, hey, no, look, there's 25 million of us. we're not going to comply, and you can't make us because there's too many of us. Unless they're going to nuke Shanghai, there's strength in numbers, and the people of China have numbers on their side.
I don't know why it is, but it's just like in any situation like that, nobody realizes that if they all just said yes, it's like kind of like, I wonder if it's like this, that when you agree with somebody when you're a kid, like we're both going to jump into the pool at the same time. It's really, really cold, but we don't want to get in slowly. And then you want to jump in at the same time to make it better. And then the other person tricks you and doesn't jump in. You're the only one that jumped in. So they're afraid they're going to like agree to say no, and they're going to be the only one that says no, and then they're going to get killed and everybody else is going to live or whatever. I don't know. But I always wonder the same thing, because there's so many situations where there's way more people than the dictator. Well, they could all just say no. I think a lot of them just don't want to say no. Like,
well, they will
I think
never
a lot
all
of them
just say no. But if enough people say no, then the restrictions end. That's what we found here in the United States, was if you've got enough people refusing.
How many people actually don't believe in this stuff? Because a lot of people in America even actually believe in stupid...
The article ends with one of the supporters of the restrictions. Adam Yan, age 26, said, "These actions will disturb the public order. It's best to believe in the government."
Learn nothing.
There's a lot of those people. Hour 3's coming up.
Have you had enough of the big-name web hosting services that are long on promises but short on bleeding-edge features, uptime, and customer service? Try Agorist Hosting, the agile web host that offers full concierge service from website redesign, full e-commerce solutions, custom apps for your Shopify store, IPFS integration, and more. Agorist Hosting is ready to take your web presence into the future. To get started, head over to agoristhosting.com.
Gold and silver. You can own the most stable assets in recorded history with BullionMax.com. Buy direct from BullionMax.com without talking to a salesperson, and your precious metals shipped fully insured directly to your home. Free Talk Live can get you their silver starter kit at employee pricing. Just go to BullionMax.com/FTL. It includes 5 ounces of the most desirable silver products plus a free gold bag. This offer is limited to 1 per household, so get yours now. Go to BullionMax.com/FTL. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com. What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Chris Jones. Large-scale protests across China against the government's strict COVID-19 restrictions continue. Police have arrested several demonstrators in what's seen as unprecedented civil disobedience under the leader of Xi Jinping. Patrick Falk reports from Hong Kong.
These protests are gathering momentum. It is taking place in various cities across the mainland, including Chengdu, Wuhan, on university campuses in Beijing. Many people also defying health officials' advice to stay indoors because of the spread of the virus in Beijing's Chaoyang district. And of course, also in Shanghai, where protests have arguably been more confrontational on Urumqi Road. All this triggered by the apartment fire that took place in Urumqi, the capital of Xinjiang province. But these protests aren't just about COVID curbs and what happened in Urumqi. People are also voicing discontent over censorship, with a lot of people symbolically holding up blank pieces of paper.
The armed forces could be brought in to help the UK's health service during upcoming strikes. Health and defence officials are drawing up contingency plans, which could see personnel filling in for ambulance drivers and frontline hospital roles. Nurses are set to hold strike action over pay before Christmas. Business Secretary Grant Shapps says the military would only be used as a last resort.
The NHS always gets ready for any potential disruption, so it's not unusual to sort of game these things out. There's no plan at the moment to call in the army. What is important, though, is I think ideally to get this situation resolved. Nobody wants to see the NHS disrupted. I suspect least of all the nurses.
Britain's electricity operator has stopped short of triggering its emergency winter scheme, which would have required households and businesses to cut their energy usage. A warning had been issued that such steps could be necessary to avoid blackouts in the country on Tuesday. And the Biden administration has quietly approved plans to build the largest oil export terminal in the United States. Here's FSN's Tony Waterman in Texas.
The Seaport Oil Terminal, known as SPOT, would have the capacity to export 2 million barrels per day, making it the largest in the U.S. It is the first of 4 proposed terminals along Texas's Gulf Coast to be approved. The Maritime Administration says it's important to the national interest, but environmental groups have blasted the decision, pointing to a government-led impact statement released in July, which found the project would emit more than 230 million tons of carbon dioxide each year. This could jeopardize the Biden administration's goals of slashing carbon emissions in half by 2030.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks, looking today at the complexity of rooting for your team at the 2022 World Cup in Qatar if you happen to be an Iranian. The timing of the tournament, coming as it does in the middle of nationwide protests and upheaval in Iran, has created a dilemma for many Iranians who have travelled to Doha to see the games live and for those watching around the world on television. John Gazvinian is an Iranian-American author and historian whose most recent book charted the history of U.S. relations with Iran.
Nationalism and patriotism is a complicated thing for Iranians. Iran obviously had a revolution a little bit more than 40 years ago, so there are contentions over exactly what it means to be Iranian, what it means to be excited about cheering on the Iranian national team. Even things as simple as a flag. Of course, the Islamic Republic has a flag. It's the official flag of Iran, but I mean, you have people who want to wave the pre-revolutionary flag, the flag of the old Iranian monarchy. At a time like this when emotions are running very, very high, what does it actually mean to be Iranian and to come out and cheer on a national football team?
And on Friday, tensions between pro-government and anti-government fans boiled over during Iran's match against Wales, with female anti-government fans claiming harassment by pro-regime supporters. Notably on Friday, the Iranian team sang the country's national anthem, in contrast to their silence during their first World Cup fixture against England. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
To recap our top stories, large-scale protests across China against the government's strict COVID-19 restrictions have continued for a 4th day. The UK's armed forces could be brought in to help the country's health service during large upcoming nurse strikes. Britain's electricity operator has stopped short of triggering its emergency winter scheme, which would have required households and businesses to cut their energy use. And the White House has quietly approved plans to build the largest oil export terminal in the United States. That's the latest feature story news. Chris Jones reporting.
Video game players love customizing every aspect of their character. One game, Elder Scrolls Online, has set a new bar for character creation by letting players design every organ and cell in their avatar's body.
In Elder Scrolls Online, you get to play as whoever you want to play. You are in control of everything from your character's face to their hair to their arteries. We're not just going to give you some pre-made bones and ligaments. You get to create the musculoskeletal system that's right for you. You can even alter the DNA.
Are all of these changes just cosmetic?
No, not at all. They have a huge effect on game playing. If your character's body has any anatomical flaws, they could die immediately.
Beta testers say that designing every aspect of their character is a compelling experience.
I've been designing my orc's liver for 5 hours now. This is awesome.
Designing the hands is the hardest part. I keep having to look up how all the joints connect.
Players can also press the randomize button to get a completely random collection of body parts.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live.
is Free Talk Live, and you can join the show here. The number 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Joining you tonight, it's Ian.
It's Bonnie.
And Arya.
We started out talking about tyranny abroad in the form of the Chinese government cracking down, it seems, on protests, anti-COVID restriction protests in the streets in various different cities. And now we're going to go to tyranny closer to home. The New York State now approving, the government gang there now approving a ban on certain types of cryptocurrency mining.
Yeah, this is so bizarre to me. And I'm sure they'll have some weird explanation about how they're banning some crypto mining, but not other crypto mining. I could understand to an extent why they would want to ban like Bitcoin mining because it's so energy intensive, but it's not profitable anywhere in New York to mine Bitcoin.
Well, maybe it is if you have a hydroelectric dam.
But that's not in the city,
I thought there
right?
were better places.
This isn't city. This is the state. The entire state of New York.
Oh, okay.
It may be profitable, but I thought there were still much better places with hydroelectric.
Around the world. I mean, yeah.
Just in the U.S. alone.
Oh, perhaps so. But there was a story on this show and within the last few years about a city in upstate New York that has a hydroelectric dam, and it's a power generation thing, right? Like they generate power there, and they feed that power out to the town, but the dam decided that they were going to go ahead and do Bitcoin mining there. Because
why not? You got water, you got electricity. That's the two things you need.
Right, and in a lot of cases, you actually have extra electricity. Right, you've generate a certain amount per whatever kilowatt hour of electricity from this water that's running through the dam, and if people in the town don't use that power, well, you don't just get to store it somewhere, right? Like,
well, I'm sure they have ways of storing some of it.
I mean, there are batteries and that sort of thing, but for the most part, if you can't use that power in that instant, it's not very useful, right? Like you got to spend it then. I wouldn't know.
It's kind of like a waste because you spend energy making the energy or getting the energy.
Yeah, I mean, it's a net loss. I mean, even nuclear energy, you only get back like 5% of the energy that you put into it. You just have it in an easily harnessable way all at once.
Really? Nuclear is...
I think it's only 5% efficient. I'd have to double check.
I'm surprised if that's
but that's one of the more efficient ones.
Wow. Yeah, check that one for me, will you? The number here is 603-283-6160. But New York Governor Kathy Hochul signed a law apparently last week, it looks like, banning certain Bitcoin mining operations that run on carbon-based power sources for the next 2 years unless a proof-of-work mining company uses 100% renewable energy. It will not be allowed to expand or renew permits, and new entrants will not be allowed to come online.
Well, I guess it's not as new and crazy of a law. Not saying that I like it or anything like that. I think it's crazy to have any laws, but I just think that it's not as new and crazy considering they already do that kind of thing to the car industry. Like, you can't just I'm going to be a new car manufacturer and I'm not going to pay attention to those specs.
The government requirements.
The government requirements on, environmental things.
You're right. I was way off. It's 33 to 37% efficiency.
And that's the highest efficiency.
Really, I would have expected that if you have a energy making thing, I don't know. I would have expected it to be pretty high. I don't know. Yeah. But I've never looked into it.
Kathy,
I don't know to what extent they're including all of the mining and the transporting stuff to get it there, because you also have to include that in the efficiency as well. Like the uranium and the plutonium, it didn't just get there; it had to be transported. And they're probably just talking about the actual converting the uranium into whatever it is that they do to make it produce energy. That's probably what they're counting, and not every human step along the way who are also putting energy into the process. True. So I don't know.
So she proclaimed, the governess, saying it's the first of its kind in the country, suggesting, of course, that there will be others who follow their lead in New York, again banning certain Bitcoin mining operations.
Bitcoin or cryptocurrency?
Any proof of work cryptocurrency, as I understand it. She said it was a key step for New York as the state looks to curb its carbon footprint by cracking down on mines that use electricity from power plants that burn fossil fuels. The law also comes as the cryptocurrency industry reels from the implosion of FTX, which was once one of the most popular and trusted names in the industry.
Well, what else do the power plants that use fossil fuels fuel? Like, are there factories in the same town? Are they going to get cracked down on?
No, only cryptocurrency.
Yeah,
in this case.
Stupid.
And cryptocurrency isn't reeling from the collapse of FTX. I mean, it's pretty much about where it has been for the last year or so.
It took a little dive.
Yeah,
for the price.
About 20%-ish, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not like
20
reeling.
to 16, 20,000
What about
to 16?
the trading volume every day? Is it still?
It's a good question. We should look at that.
That I feel like has more to do is more indicative than just the price
of activity. Yeah, that's true.
Are people just getting out and staying out and never touching crypto again?
No, certainly not. I mean, the FTX thing has people spooked, but most people, I think, understand that cryptocurrency survived Mt. Gox. Yep. It survived the one in Canada. It survived all of them, and it's going to survive this.
You are listing other exchanges that have gone out of business for various reasons.
Quadriga CX was the Canadian one, and it's remarkably similar to this FTX one, where you had this shady guy who seemed to be embezzling money, stealing from the company. As you mentioned recently, the FTX guy, all of their wallets started getting hacked, like right before they filed bankruptcy.
The same night, the night of.
It says, wow, this sucks so bad. Here, all we had here was a scammer, a hacker, an IT pro, a crypto pro, who started a company with the sole purpose of building up a reputation as an honorable person, that we need regulation so that you would trust him and send him your money so that he could take it all and go fake his death in Thailand.
Some people, well, that part hasn't happened yet.
But it will.
But some people suspect that he's actually a government agent, that this wasn't just a scam artist, just your normal average confidence man. This was somebody who's like backed by government agencies, whether it be the CIA or the Mossad or something like that, that their goal was specifically to engineer something that would call for even more regulation.
And that could be true as well.
What year was the Canada one around?
It's a few years ago.
I've never even heard of it.
2 or 3 years ago.
Maybe 3 or 4. New York's new mining law, which passed the state assembly in late April and the state senate in June, calls for a 2-year moratorium on cryptocurrency mining operations, which use proof-of-work authentication methods to validate blockchain transactions.
So this means that someone sitting in their home with a graphics card is forbidden.
No. They're exempting the individuals from doing this at this point. So individuals, I guess, are still able, as I understand it, to mine in New York.
So if I just happen to own a property and a bunch of Bitcoin ASICs, am I exempt?
That's a good question. I don't know where they draw the lines.
Are all the Bitcoin businesses about to become sole proprietorships with a person having a lot of contracts with friends?
Yeah, it's an excellent question. Proof-of-work mining, which requires sophisticated gear and a lot of electricity, is used to create Bitcoin, among other tokens. Industry insiders tell CNBC it could have a domino effect across the U.S., which is currently at the forefront of the global Bitcoin mining industry, accounting for 38% of the world's miners. The Chamber of Digital Commerce wrote in a statement, quote, "The approval will set a dangerous precedent in determining who may or may not use power in New York State." Unquote. It's a sentiment echoed by Kevin Zhang of the digital currency company Foundry, who said, quote, "Not only is it a clear signal that New York is closed for business to Bitcoin miners, it sets a dangerous precedent for singling out a particular industry to ban from energy usage." Because the idea is it's expensive, as you pointed out, Arya, to do carbon-based fuel Bitcoin mining. If you're burning, natural gas or coal or something like that in order to run Bitcoin mining operations, it's going to be costly.
Yeah.
And so there's already a natural deterrent from doing this sort of thing. So why not just let the market operate here? If somebody feels like it's worth it to pay for these resources, they should be free to do that. But New York State says they know better.
New Hampshire needs to get its nuclear power plant back up because New Hampshire's not going to ban crypto mining. Let them come here.
Well, New Hampshire does have a nuclear power plant. It's operating, and it actually supplies.
We had 2.
Correct. Well, no, it was actually in Brattleboro, which is in Vermont. That one got shut down. But New Hampshire apparently is authorized to have a second one that it does not currently have. There's more coming up. It's Free Talk Live. Join liberty-minded voluntarists, anarchists, and libertarians from June 15th through the 18th for the 7th annual Fork Fest at Rogers Campground in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire. Forkfest is a fork of the Porcupine Freedom Festival, which sold out in 2022. For 2023, we're going back to where it all started, the weekend before Porkfest. Forkfest is decentralized, which means that there's no ticket cost and no one is in charge. All you have to do to join the fun is reserve your camping site, RV site, or motel room with Rogers Campground for June 15th through the 18th. You can find out more at the unofficial website forkfest.party. You can also connect with other attendees on the Forkfest Telegram and Matrix chat rooms, as well as the Forkfest forum. You can find links to those at forkfest.party. We hope to see you there June 15th through the 18th. Forkfest.party. The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. That's bitcoin.com.
Do you prefer to listen to Free Talk Live on your schedule on demand? You can find the link to our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com, which features the daily digest of our radio show 7 days a week. Just drop our RSS feed into your favorite podcast client or subscribe to us on the large platforms if you prefer, including Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartMedia, Spotify, and Stitcher. All the links are at feeds.freetalklive.com. If the daily digests aren't enough for you and you really don't want to miss a moment of Free Talk Live, you can always sign up for our AMPS Patreon at amps.freetalklive.com for just $5 a month, and you'll get the full radio show without recorded commercials. Plus, you'll help us advertise, market, promote, and support Free Talk Live. That's amps.freetalklive.com to join AMPS, or feeds.freetalklive.com to get our main podcast, or find us on the major podcast platforms. Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
Free speech is protected on the internet, right? Not always. Government agencies try to limit free speech and commerce on the net. Luckily, when they do, the Institute for Justice is there to defend your First Amendment right to free speech. IJ helped set the first federal precedent for internet free speech in 1999, and ever since has worked to prevent unconstitutional roadblocks in cyberspace. Visit our website today at ij.org.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live. Phones open. If you want to join the show, you can. The number is 603-283-6160. We do have our own social media server. You can join it over at social.freetalklive.com. You can interact with other Free Talk Live listeners. Some of the hosts are there as well. It's free, and it's open source, and it's self-hosted, which means we run the server and not some big tech mega corporation, which means we set the rules. And there really aren't that many. Just, have fun and don't spam and don't be, don't put anybody in like legal jeopardy or something like that. Otherwise, you'll be fine.
Yeah, it's pretty simple.
Yeah. So head over to social.freetalklive.com. We're talking about a New York law that was just signed apparently last week banning cryptocurrency mining operations. Now, it's saying it's banning quote-unquote certain Bitcoin mining operations that run on carbon-based power sources. So unless the company in question that's doing the mining is using 100% renewable energy, they will not be allowed to expand or renew permits, and new entrants will not be allowed to come online.
This is just a subsidy for, the solar panel people. That's all this is. It's a very well written and underhanded way of doing it, but this is the way of giving subsidies to the wind factories, what are the wind plants, the solar plants.
Can you even run mining off of solar? Like, does it even
I
come
mean,
up
if you
with a
have
wattage?
enough of them.
I guess. I wonder if there are many people doing that.
I mean, certainly you can run entire houses and stuff off solar, right? And wind power, I mean, you just need a lot of it. And if these people really want a lot of it and they want to mine their Bitcoin.
How are those people that are doing, like, mining via the energy that their potatoes they're growing outside? You remember that?
No.
There was like a farmer who was mining from his potatoes, and it was in England, I think. So I was going to say
potatoes were generating electricity.
I think it has something to do with the solar. I don't know.
I remember the one where you could pay cryptocurrency to feed a chicken or something.
I remember that, yeah. Bitcoin Cash, I think.
I should probably look up whatever I'm talking about before I even continue
that would be
talking about
good.
it.
Let us know what you find out. Let's go to Greg. He's in New York. You're on Free Talk Live. Go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, I didn't know anything about that law. That's interesting. I wanted to talk about sort of a software that is open source versus software that is privately owned.
Sure.
And, I think what you have to differentiate the front end software from the back end. So the front end, like the browser, has always been kind of open because it's on your computer, so you could disassemble it, right? You could look at the HTML source code for the website. And if you are running smart contracts on an Ethereum node, then you could even look at what the smart contracts say. So that's all cool, and I think that led to a lot of innovation, right? Ethereum and that whole thing, whether it's Polygon or, whether it's Binance Smart Chain, whatever it is, they're all supporting open source smart contracts in that language, which is EVM. And so, Ethereum virtual machine. And same thing with HTTP and HTML and CSS. So it has led to so much. But on the back end, in Web 2, not in Web 3, because Web 3 is run by a bunch of nodes that all, see the source code. But on Web 2, the special class of computers called servers, right? And they're behind, they're behind a firewall maybe. But the point is, you can't get in. You can't go and see what Twitter is storing on their servers, right?
Right.
And
it's closed source, as they call it.
It's closed source, and whether it's your bank or whether it's Twitter or whether it's your favorite, website, what's going on there, which is not Web 3, it's Web 2, is basically it's a separation between the users, right, and the software. So every time you want to beg Elon Musk, hey, could you add like an edit button to Twitter? Can I edit my tweets or this or that, right? There's one solution for everybody. And it's called censorship also. It's like if they don't want you on the platform, you're gone.
Yeah, but this has nothing to do with Web 2 versus Web 3.0. I realize that's the topic you're passionate about, but this is just Elon Musk and Twitter versus like Mastodon. It's just that one is decentralized and open source and one is closed source. There's plenty of open source stuff that's existed on Web 2.0 since Web 2.0 came into existence.
Well, yeah, I know. I've run a company for 10 years called Cubix, which, has been around since before I knew about Bitcoin. And that's Web 2.0. The thing is, with Web 2.0, you do get a free market if it's open source like Mastodon, but you still have a landlord. There's still someone running the instance, right, and the node who sets the rules. And that's fine. What I'm saying is we're starting to decouple the infrastructure from the accounts, right? So you could have an account, and there's nowhere in particular that is like the network for that account. It's everywhere.
But everyone can run their own server on Mastodon, so that's not
They could, but everyone's not going to.
I know everyone's not going to.
You still have to rely on people who know how to run a server in order to run a server. But I think what Greg is saying here is we're moving towards a place where accounts will exist separate from the servers, right? I think Jack, the former CEO of Twitter, was actually talking about this, and he called it Web 5,
instead of Web 3. I don't know why everybody skipped over Web 4, but that's what he called it, and he's coming up with some sort of system, and I have not looked closely at this, to essentially allow people to sort of own their own identity.
I mean, this is super easy. I mean, all we have to do is every single time someone is born, we just give them a 9-digit number broken into 3 different parts, right? Something like 554, like a social security number. And then that's permanently tied to their existence. We register it with some government or some supercomputer or whatever.
I don't think that's what he's proposing.
But that's essentially what they're saying. You have this unique identity. It's yours, and it's essentially immutable.
Well,
and thus the record stands.
Yeah, that's kind of silly. But I would like to say that first of all, with bots, and they're getting smarter, the concept of an identity will become kind of a complex thing, because you could have, a bot would have many identities, and people could have many identities using user agents and bots.
Identity is already a complex thing, because there's like what you do and who you really are. I mean, it's not a robot thing, it's a human thing.
Exactly. So having your own private key and everything is tied to it, I think you should have reputation. You could have many accounts, but each of these accounts would have to earn reputation over time in certain, networks, and that's how people will know that to trust you. But I personally just think that people are going to eventually form organizations completely without being tied to a specific server farm, as it is right now. You started the server farm, and you get this outsized influence on what everyone does on the network. And that's fine when the network is small, but I think as the networks get bigger, it should be owned by the people. That's just my personal thing. But maybe it shouldn't be owned at all. Maybe people should just have...
I think tech people have gotten caught up in their own little worlds and their own little echo chambers, dreaming up all of these great visions of the future and how the internet will work, and they've completely forgotten that more and more people are detaching from the internet and returning to the real world. They're turning away from social media. Yeah, just about everyone I work with, they're all leaving Facebook. They use TikTok every now and then, but TikTok's not really a social media. People are turning away from this crap. They hate it.
It is something that is going to be developed, I think, over time, though. Greg, thank you for the call tonight. I appreciate hearing from you. I did pull up something about what Jack is working on. Jack Dorsey, the former CEO of Twitter, and this sort of account that's not an account thing that doesn't exist on the site or whatever. I'll try to get a grasp for this concept, see if we can communicate it here, because it seems kind of in line with what Greg is talking about. The number is 603-283-6160.
We have some good news. The indictments against Ross Ulbricht in the District of Maryland were dismissed with prejudice, meaning they can never be refiled. This is especially good because those indictments contain the only charge ever made that Ross engaged in murder for hire. This was a serious allegation that Ross Ulbricht denies. It was never prosecuted or ruled on by a jury, but was trumpeted by the federal government and the media as if it were proven fact. The Maryland court held these indictments for almost 5 years, poisoning Ross's case and leaving him under a cloud of unproven allegations. As explained in Ross's appeal to the Supreme Court, the fact that the judge used these allegations to give Ross a draconian sentence of double life without parole violated his Sixth Amendment right to a jury trial. Judges are required to issue sentences based on convictions decided by a jury, not unproven allegations never even charged at trial. Although this is a positive development, the dropped indictment will not set Ross free. Now, a presidential pardon is Ross's only hope of freedom. Sign the petition at freeross.org. freeross.org.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Chris Jones. Large-scale protests across China against the government's strict COVID-19 restrictions continue. Police have arrested several demonstrators in what's seen as unprecedented civil disobedience under the leader of Xi Jinping. Patrick Falk reports from Hong Kong.
These protests are gathering momentum. It is taking place in various cities across the mainland, including Chengdu, Wuhan, on university campuses in Beijing. Many people also defying health officials' advice to stay indoors because of the spread of the virus in Beijing's Chaoyang district. And of course, also in Shanghai, where protests have arguably been more confrontational on Urumqi Road. All this triggered by the apartment fire that took place in Urumqi, the capital of Xinjiang province. But these protests aren't just about COVID curbs and what happened in Urumqi. People are also voicing discontent over censorship, with a lot of people symbolically holding up blank pieces of paper.
The armed forces could be brought in to help the UK's health service during upcoming strikes. Health and defence officials are drawing up contingency plans, which could see personnel filling in for ambulance drivers and frontline hospital roles. Nurses are set to hold strike action over pay before Christmas. Business Secretary Grant Shapps says the military would only be used as a last resort.
The NHS always gets ready for any potential disruption, so it's not unusual to sort of game these things out. There's no plan at the moment to call in the army. What is important, though, is I think ideally to get this situation resolved. Nobody wants to see the NHS disrupted. I suspect least of all the nurses.
Britain's electricity operator has stopped short of triggering its emergency winter scheme, which would have required households and businesses to cut their energy usage. A warning had been issued that such steps could be necessary to avoid blackouts in the country on Tuesday. And the Biden administration has quietly approved plans to build the largest oil export terminal in the United States. Here's FSN's Tony Waterman in Texas.
The Seaport Oil Terminal, known as SPOT, would have the capacity to export 2 million barrels per day, making it the largest in the U.S. It is the first of 4 proposed terminals along Texas's Gulf Coast to be approved. The Maritime Administration says it's important to the national interest, but environmental groups have blasted the decision, pointing to a government-led impact statement released in July, which found the project would emit more than 230 million tons of carbon dioxide each year. This could jeopardize the Biden administration's goals of slashing carbon emissions in half by 2030.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live. The phones are open. You can join the show here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Here tonight, it's Ian.
It's Bonnie.
And Aria.
Join us online, of course, over at freetalklive.com and enjoy the features that we have there for you. Once again, that is freetalklive.com. We had Greg on the line a moment ago talking about what it sounded like he was talking about was decentralized identity, or at least this is one of the concepts that is coming down the line, and people like Jack Dorsey, the former CEO of Twitter, has been working on what he calls a Web 5 project or Web 5 components. Now, again, I don't know what Web 4 is. I'm not sure if there is a Web 4.
Well, we don't know what Web 3 is at this point.
Yeah, it seems like they're getting a little ahead of themselves, but whatever. They can label whatever they want as whatever they want to label it. But, without getting too technically detailed, because I have no real conceptualization of how this works, the article I pulled up from CoinDesk doesn't really go into the technical details, but they do talk about initiatives to create what are called decentralized identifiers, with the concept being that your account is your account. Your identity or whatever is your identity, and you wouldn't be able to necessarily, I mean, they could probably ban you from a certain service or something like that, but they wouldn't be able to like wipe you out from the internet.
Sort of like what Coinbase, not Coinbase, Keybase was doing, but grander, it sounds like.
Maybe. I did read something at some point about this, and it did a better job of explaining it, but I don't think I bookmarked it.
Well, the thing I want to wonder, or it makes me wonder, is just I don't understand what's the point of why do they want so badly to identify and confirm people?
Well, I don't think it would be about your identity per se. It wouldn't necessarily have to be Bonnie Freeman. It might just be, some other name that you have created that is an internet identity. Now, I'm not saying
that's what I meant when I said that I think these IT people have gotten lost in their own little worlds. I had a conversation with one very similar to Greg who had this idea that everyone would run their own social media server, and it would reach out and interact with other people. Basically, everyone would run their own Mastodon, except it was more than Mastodon. It would also have this social credit system and all of these other...
Well, that's what Greg was basically saying.
Yeah, and all of these other wonderful little things. And if you and I were friends, then our servers could talk to each other, and there would be a reputation system that established that. And it's like, okay, guys, all of that sounds cool, But why we have the same thing sitting here in the room next to each other?
Can your grandma run the server?
Yeah, no, certainly not.
Right.
But the servers are completely superfluous to the reality. They're just these things. They're digital manifestations of a friendship that literally exists in person. And we live in a world where people are trying to go away from those digital manifestations of friendship. So I don't see the point, and I think the world they're trying to build is never going to come to fruition.
I did find a better article here from makeuseof.com. What is Jack Dorsey's Web 5 and how will it work? And their subheadline is, we're only just getting into Web 3, yet some are already talking about Web 5. They point out that over the past few years, powerful companies like Facebook, Google, and Amazon have taken more control online. Each platform has its interests, goals, and plans to profit from us in one way or another. Not necessarily because they want to, but that's because how capitalism works. Well, that's a silly statement. Of course they want to profit. That's why they're organized. However, Web 5, the decentralized web, takes away these big companies' power and gives it to you and other users. So what is it and how does it work? Well, it's a recent development in blockchain technology that has been considered an upgrade from Web 3, a platform that offers you control over your data. Jack Dorsey introduced the idea in June of this year. The major aim of the introduced platform is to enable you to control your personal information and data. It is a more decentralized internet than the previous versions because it uses a different design for its operations. It is designed for you to be more open and connected with the network, such that it is similar to a virtual assistant. Web 5 will be structured using decentralized web nodes, or DWNs, that can be self-hosted. Web users can operate themselves without the need for an intermediary. In this regard, an improvement in Web 5 is the choice to make personal data and information public now lies with the user.
So it's basically the same thing that Greg and this other person were saying.
People could always just make their own websites. So I don't get what the need is. People can make their own websites and email each other like right now.
This isn't about websites. It's about, I think it's more about identity.
I'm not saying it's about that. I'm just saying that, like, if you wanted, it's my own page and it's my own, it's going to be all about me or whatever. Like, you could do that now.
You can definitely create a digital identity for yourself. I mean,
but you can't plug that into other websites. You can go and create your own website, is what you're saying, but you can't use that to log in to Facebook, or you can't use that to log in to Twitter.
You sort of can in the way that I was getting at. Disregarding websites, you can already create your own digital identity online. Arya DiMezzo existed online for years before I existed here as a physical person.
But when you go and you register for Twitter, you have to plug in an email address. You have to plug in a password.
All belonging to this who was then this non-existent person named Arya DiMezzo.
Sure.
It was just a fake online identity at that point.
Right. But I think what they're saying here is that if Twitter, you know how there was up for a while, and it probably still is a thing, you could go to some websites and it would say, log in with Facebook, log in with Google, or like in small text, you could create an account on that actual website.
Yeah.
Well, what happened was if you logged in with Facebook for a bunch of these sites, and then Facebook deleted your account because you said something that was upsetting or whatever, what happens to all your logins for those other sites that were relying on Facebook?
Yeah, they presumably get deleted. This is why people got kicked off their Oculuses and stuff like that.
Yeah, you basically become a non-existent entity on those other sites that you went through. Oh, it's convenient. Oh, I'll just use my Facebook account. Whoops, Facebook decided you shouldn't exist anymore. Right?
There's probably a way to recover that, but you would have to go through the trouble of doing it.
So verify. So here are 3 features of Web 5 they say that'll make it different from the previous web editions. Verifiable credentials is number 1, which will allow you to have exclusive access to your data without the involvement of third parties as currently exist in Web 3. They're calling this the self-sovereignty of the user. Those are words I like.
Yeah, but it's already the case. Everything that's online about us is stuff that we put online. So I mean, we could just stop putting it online.
I think they're talking about that this would be a credential, right? Like you guys are going back to having websites and things like that. They're saying this would be.
No, I'm talking about just a person's data. That's what they said. You know, it's about ownership of your data. Well, the only reason I don't own it is because I was the one who put data about me online.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, but we're talking about more like logging into websites, creating accounts, things like that. The credentials are a digitalized.
But I think she's saying like. She agreed to make the account, so she already...
Yeah, I get it. But the idea would be this would be seceding from that concept, and you wouldn't have to create accounts. Essentially, is you would be able to just.
I already understand that you don't have to create accounts, and it's like your account can. I just think that it's something that nobody wants. The reason I brought up websites is not because I'm saying websites the same exact thing. I'm saying nobody wants to do that now.
Could be.
No one wants like, hey guys, by the way, I have my own site. If you want to go check out my site, you can make sure you know it's me. Nobody cares about that. Right now, people would rather just get an account on the website. I don't understand why not. Like, I understand that
maybe this will be easier. Maybe instead of having to go and create an account, you'll just automatically be able to log in. Saves you some time. But I get what you're saying. You're not seeing the value proposition in this, and maybe most people won't see this as valuable, and it will completely go by the wayside. But the credentials are a digitalized representation of your identity and are important for you to identify yourself, again, without the involvement of an intermediary. You can compare verifiable credentials in the traditional means of identification used in the physical world, such as passports and driver's licenses. The difference between these traditional IDs and those in Web 5 is that in Web 5, they're digitally signed and verifiable. You can build up your credentials on the network and then use them on any platform that requires verification.
But I do see that the positive that if this is what it's saying, that there's not some database of other people that have my information and it can get leaked. Like that happened on Neopets this year, actually.
Oh, really?
I got a bunch of emails that were like, if you're part of, if you were part of something on Neopets, our information got hacked and leaked, and they found out that no credit card information was leaked, so that was good. Well, Neopets never held on to the credit card information, but they were still really concerned about names and
so that
things
may be
like
another
that.
Good point, Bonnie. This may actually keep your information more secure. Point 2 is decentralized web nodes are mostly responsible for user interaction. They act as data storage units controlled by the users, not a different entity like previous web versions. The decentralization of the nodes eliminates the needs for other platforms like Twitter or Facebook, which currently have access to your private and public information. So somehow decentralizing account information.
The Shire Free Church offers a sanctuary to those seeking an escape from state churches.
The Shire Free Church is an interfaith, diverse group of people that may not share identical theological beliefs.
As a member in or minister of the Shire Free Church, you are a sovereign individual and may be the faith of your choice.
We don't claim to have all of the answers.
We are open to all peaceful people.
We want to learn from each other.
What unifies the Shire Free Church and its diverse members is peace,
love,
and liberty. There are many paths to God, one for every individual.
The Shire Free Church does not define a specific path beyond these parameters that must be your foundation.
Peace as your way.
Love as your guide.
And liberty as your light.
Learn more at church.shiresociety.com.
That's church.shiresociety.com.
Is oral health important to you? If you don't like your own teeth, fresh breath, or kissing people, then by all means stop listening. Several years ago, I met Jessica Armand, founder and CEO of My Magic Mud, and I became passionate about the product that she created and never want to live without it. It's clinically proven to whiten teeth, but I find it does much more. They want you to love My Magic Mud as much as I do, so they're giving you a money-back guarantee plus 20% off. Go to mymagicmud.com and use coupon code FTL20 at checkout. mymagicmud.com, FTL20.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com. Why did you move to the Shire?
I moved here to the Shire because there's other people around who take liberty just as seriously as I do.
I moved to the Shire because I saw videos of people challenging authority and thought that I could get support myself. It called to me, like, do this, right now.
I wanted to be around people like me who got it, and once I got here, I knew there was nowhere else that I wanted to be.
I've always wanted to change the world, so I moved to the Shire to join people who were actually working towards doing the same thing.
The people here are awesome, loving, and positive. It was for the adventure and for the feeling of something important is happening here, and I just wanted to come to sort of be part of that.
Visit ShireSociety.com to read and sign the Shire Society Declaration and learn the reasons why, if you love liberty, you should immigrate to the Shire. Plus, connect with others via the forum at ShireSociety.com. That's ShireSociety.com. What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer-term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com.
Is Free Talk Live. Moments remain here. Enough time for you if you want to join us. The number 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Here tonight, it's Ian.
It's Bonnie.
And Aria.
Join us online anytime at freetalklive.com and enjoy all the features we have there for you. We got our podcast feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. You can link over, subscribe to the main podcast, which has the daily digest in it, and then there's other options there for you as well over at feeds.freetalklive.com. Now, this Web 5 concept, obviously this is off in the distance somewhere. Who knows when or if this is going to become a reality. Bonnie, you're saying, and I think Aria, you're saying as well, that people aren't going to value this concept of decentralized.
I don't understand the concept enough to really say that definitively.
I can't say I do either, but my understanding of it so far is to decentralize the concept of your identity and essentially put that into the individual's hands instead of the hands of mega corporations. And from that perspective, I like that direction that this might be going in.
I have my own blinders, just like the Web 3.0 and the people like Greg do. I mean, they're blind to certain realities. So am I. I tend to think the next 15 to 20 years is going to be a mass pulling away from these devices.
You think the pendulum's going to swing away from internet and back into reality?
Yes. I don't know. I strongly believe that is going to be the case.
I keep hearing that people are leaving Instagram, and I haven't been on Instagram in like a couple months.
But aren't they just going to TikTok instead?
No, because TikTok has been a thing, and people are getting, like, people that I know who were like, oh my God, I've been watching TikTok all day, every day in like 2020. That's not really a thing anymore. It was like a pandemic thing. It was like a
But are they going outside,
thing.
or are they just watching more videos or something somewhere?
I don't know.
Right?
I just keep hearing people saying that they're never going on Instagram again. Because for one thing, Instagram keeps trying to be more like TikTok, and it's annoying. Like oh my God, I've never seen something like this before. Earlier this year, Instagram came out with a upgrade or whatever, and they had like a black background type of thing, dark mode. It was like you switch up and the whole page moves all at once, just like TikTok, to a new video, mostly short thing. Like they added this thing called Reels earlier this year that's just, like, TikTok. But they made the site even more like TikTok. So many people left, logged out, including me. I literally was like, this is the last straw. And I deleted the app from my phone and was like, I'm never going on that again. And then I heard that they reversed it in like 3 days.
Because that many people were leaving.
And they never do stuff like that because they've done so many things that everyone hates, and they have left it. Like so many like things with their algorithm that people hate.
I was never big on Instagram, but I almost never use any social media these days at all. Like Snapchat and TikTok, those are about the only places that you can find me to interact with me. I mean, I use Facebook. I post and then go. And I use Facebook Messenger to some extent to message with people, but that's basically just because group chats, and now more and more of those are happening on Snapchat. And these aren't really social media platforms, not in the sense of Facebook and Twitter and MySpace. it's just an app that does a thing, and you do have an online identity in that app, but it's not, you don't have a profile page in the way that you do with Twitter and Facebook and your own feed and all of this other stuff. And I think that's the way things are going to continue going, where this is just an app, people use it, and then they close it and they get on with their lives.
Right, and like on Snapchat, I'm never like going and finding a new person to be friends with. It's only like in real life, if someone's like, do you have a Snapchat? Then I will add them on there. But you don't ever just go like searching for someone you know in real life. Like, I don't know why that's just not a thing.
In my experience, these apps are now becoming things that complement real life and add to it rather than being substitutes for it, which is what Facebook and other social media sites happen to become.
Let's go to Jack. He's on the line in Ocean Shores, Washington. Go ahead, Jack.
Hey, thanks. It's my Friday, so I'm enjoying the show.
Welcome.
I was a member of Twitter from 2009 to 2021. I was permanently suspended. I commented about an older person getting beat up on a subway, and it was disturbing. So I said, if I was there, I would have helped them, and they kicked me off for that.
Well, you may be able to get back on if Elon Musk's amnesty.
This is where I'm going.
Oh.
No, I got an email last night from Twitter that said that, because I've been on since 2009, so they have a heck of a file on me.
Right.
And it said, no, I've been too repeatedly offensive or one directional.
Wow.
So, yeah.
But the Elon Musk one-time amnesty thing, that hasn't even happened yet.
It was supposed to start this week.
Yeah, but it hasn't started yet, has it?
I don't know. He said it was going to be this week. I thought he meant Monday.
I don't even know what that is. What's the one-time amnesty thing?
They're going to unban all banned accounts.
Unless you were banned for spam or for breaking the law.
Illegal. Yeah, I didn't do anything illegal.
But it's funny that they just emailed you about that. You said today or yesterday?
Last night, as I was going to bed.
Did you initiate this in some way? Did you ask for your account to be unsuspended?
Yeah, if you get permanently suspended, it gives you access to email them. You know, I had direct email contact with them.
Okay. How long ago did you email them?
I'd say 4 months ago, probably.
So they just got back to you last night and told you, no, you won't be allowed back because you have had repeated violations?
Yeah, being on for 13 years probably hurts my case, you know.
Huh. That's interesting that it was just happened to be last night that they emailed you.
I think it's just coincidental, though.
Yeah, maybe the amnesty hasn't started yet. I mean, I certainly haven't seen Musk. I just looked at his posts because he apparently retweeted Library earlier today when Library was talking about the Apple iPhone restrictions that they had to put into place just to keep their app on iPhone. Yeah, he was talking.
Did Library do those restrictions?
Yeah, they had to if they wanted to stay on iPhone.
Can I bring up animal abuse real quick?
So I'm just saying, Jack, maybe you will be amnestied this week. It's still possible, I would say. Anyway, go ahead.
I hope so. They have really good news feeds. I'm sorry. The worst video I've ever seen, where I think it was an Arab country. It was a dog in like a harness set up kind of like a piñata.
Do you want to talk about animal abuse, or do you want to describe animal abuse? Because I'm down for the first one, not so much the second.
It was the most disturbing.
Yeah, I think we've heard enough about what you were going to say, but
yeah, the dog wasn't barking or anything.
It's probably not alive.
It was worse than war.
Thank you for the call tonight. I appreciate it. The number here is 603-283-6160. You can bring up absolutely anything you want to discuss. So we were talking about Bitcoin mining being banned in New York State. Now, not all Bitcoin mining apparently yet has been banned. Existing mining operations are not being shuttered immediately, but
they won't be renewed.
Correct. Licenses, so-called, will not be renewed. This according to CNBC's story about this. And what else do we need to know here? This is according to the Kathy Hochul. She's the governor there. She says, quote, "I will ensure that New York continues to be the center of financial innovation while also
You're literally doing everything you can to make sure that's not the case."
Yeah, exactly. Well, remember, New York is the state where they passed the so-called BIT license in 2015. So more than half a decade ago, New York already decided they were going to be the least friendly place to Bitcoin businesses and said, if you want to have a Bitcoin business here, not like a retailer that accepts Bitcoin, but somebody who's like developing Bitcoin
You
software.
probably can't do that
stuff.
either, though.
Well, I haven't heard that's been banned from New York. I don't think that has been banned yet. But if you're a Bitcoin like innovator, if you're a Bitcoin centralized exchange, or if you're a Bitcoin, some kind of company that's focusing on Bitcoin creation, you're basically screwed if you're in New York. And now Bitcoin miners being heavily restricted. Basically, anyone that is not using 100% renewable power for a Bitcoin mining operation of some sort of size. Again, they're saying that individuals are exempted from this, but again, where do you cross the line from being an individual into a operation? And I don't have the law in front of me, so I don't know.
I'm sure they've defined a place, though, in a way that most will convenient them when they bring charges against someone, because that's what they do. They almost certainly left it undefined, obviously. And if you need to be an individual for them to prosecute you, that's what they'll do. And if they need you to be an organization, then they'll call you an organization.
According to the story here at MSN, of course, China, as you know, cracked down on Bitcoin mining in 2021, which means New York is the most like China than any of the other 49 states.
I mean, this is good news for like Montana and Wyoming and New Hampshire and other states that are friendly.
Come on over.
Yeah.
In fact, it would be great if we could get some of these Bitcoin innovators to leave New York and come here to New Hampshire. I think that's what New Hampshire needs to do, is it needs to call up these Bitcoin miners, like directly, people from New Hampshire who are in the Bitcoin industry here, need to call up and say, hey, look, all you got to do is move 4 hours to the east, or a few hours to the east, and you're going to have a much more friendly environment where you actually have state legislators who own Bitcoin and who are interested in cryptocurrency, and it's one of the friendliest places as far as government regulations are concerned. The only problem here is we still have the federal government to deal with, and that's a whole other story. We'll see you tomorrow night online in the meantime at freetalklive.com. Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live?